Oliveira, Wareham. Conditional building official endorsed by Rod Palmer in Wareham. Do I have a motion? Second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Frank Guerrero Jr., building commissioner for Brockton. Do I have a motion? Second? All in favor? Fantastic. Martin Furtado, if I just butchered that, I apologize. Local inspector in Orleans. Do I have a motion? Second? All in favor? Thank you. Are we done? You have a lapel?
Yeah, I do have one.
Take it. Lot two. Ooh, step back.
Don't say nothing bad.
It is all yours. Thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, guys, you can hear me pretty well, or I need to turn it up a little bit? All right? All right. So first of all, let's talk about what's up here, and let's talk about the history of fire escapes. So most fire escapes in your city are 75 to 125 years old. Because around the 30s, they stopped building fire escapes because they said these things are not being maintained, so let's start putting fire escapes on the inside. Staircases on the inside, double staircases inside. And then they put that law out, no new fire escapes. Anybody know that that's a code? No new fire escapes. What means is that if you dig a hole in the ground and you put up a new structure, no new fire escapes. But pre-existing buildings that need to satisfy their means of egress, guess what they get to keep? Fire escapes. So remember that is half truth. No new fire escapes. But you give me a barn, a church, a factory, if they can't get a staircase inside, a mansion that they're going to create 4 condos, guess what they get to play with? New code compliant fire escapes. Okay? Any challenges to that, or is that a true statement? Because if I say something wrong, you guys raise your hands, because usually whenever somebody tells me you can't do that, I say, anybody else want to challenge him? And usually there's always 2 sides to every story. That somebody on this side, yes, you still can, and this side. So I'm not a code guru, it's just you guys know you guys are. But I just want to make that clear. So let's take a look at this picture. This picture is over 75 plus years old, right? You know that fire escape is certified? Why? Look how many firemen are on it. 100 pounds per square foot. We're going to talk about load testing last. But look how many firemen are on this thing. So what's that mean? Let me just explain the 100 pounds per square foot rule. See one of the platforms there at the very top? 5 by 5, plus minus. 5 times 5 is 25 times 100. 2,500 pounds that fire escape was built to hold. So if you take an average of the tenants when they first come out of this fire escape, because they get to use it first. They're out, they get to the ground, they leave, the firemen show up, they use it. So if I have a 150-pound average person getting on that 5 by 5 square, I can put 10 of them in that 5 by 5 square, and that's only 1,500 pounds. There's still another 1,000 pounds to go. Firemen, let's put them in at 250 pounds. If I get 5 firemen, or 10, if I can get 10 firemen, which you can't with all their gear on, that would be 2,500 pounds. So half of that, which is 5 firemen on there, which we have them here. So they can hold. You can fill this whole fire escape up with as many people as you want on every stair, every square inch, and this thing will not pull away from the wall. Okay? And the reason why it won't pull away from the wall is because it has a through bolt, which is 3/4 threaded rod, duplicated every 4 feet, plus minus. So what's that mean? That means that 75 years ago plus, these things were rock solid. You guys didn't have to do a thing. They just kept it painted. Fast forward 75 years. We got rust growing. All the 1/4 inch of steel, which is the minimum when you're building fire escapes, the minimum is a 1/4 inch of rust. I mean, a 1/4 inch of steel to build any component. 2x2 angles, railings, everything's 1/4 inch thick minimum. Grading. And all of a sudden it becomes 3/4 to 1 inch of rust. So a 1/4 inch of brand new steel, you leave it alone for 50 to 75 years or more, it'll give you 1 inch of rust on any connection that you want. And inside that connection, there's this head of a bolt, the tail of a bolt, the nut. And again, you guys can come up afterwards during the quick break we're gonna have in the middle, and you can see this table I use whenever I go to expert witnesses cases. And they want to know what these things look like before they hurt or killed somebody. And I have had this bolt. And I don't know if you can see it, but look at the middle of this bolt. And so these are the things that hurt and kill people. So I got plenty of rust up here for you guys to see, because these things are unknown. The only way we find out if we have a weakened bolt with 1/16 still left in the center is if we load test it. Otherwise, you see this much rust. Somebody a question in the back?
Yeah. How much longer before that completely fails and falls off the building?
A fire escape?
At that point, at the point where it's that quarter-inch left.
Oh yeah, this is a 16th left in the middle here. Even though it's still got 3/8 on this side, which is the outside head. The square heads, if you see any square head bolts, they're 75 to 125 years old, originally put in when the structure went up. On average, you're supposed to change these bolts out every 25 to 35 years, and it'll satisfy the National Fire, the NFEA. And what is that? They have the law since 27. The authority having jurisdiction shall accept by load test, which will find these pieces that are ready to go, or other evidence of strength, which means that if you change these bolts out every 25 to 35 years, whether they're good or bad, then there is no load test for the next 15 to 25 years. Why? Because you've satisfied other evidence of strength. All right, so I got plenty of, as they say, rust that we use to, in court cases to show what happened just before the accident occurred. Go ahead.
You were mentioning that it's through bolted into the structure.
Yeah.
But in what part of the structure? Is there any consideration as to what kind of damage the fire is doing to that structure in the meantime?
Oh, yeah. That's a great question. So, when you speak with firemen, what kills people? The fire or the smoke? So, and the temperature inside there will cook you. So if it hits 1,000 degrees inside that room. So by the time this is ready to collapse the wall, the building, nobody can survive inside that building. This is 3/4, and this is how you put it in the wall. 2 studs. You have to put in a 2x8 or 2x10 blocking inside. Then the through bolt and the toenail to the 2x4s. And then the plate, which is a big washer, 8x4 or 10x5 piece of plate, basically, in order for it to rip itself out, because it's not to the sheathing, it's got to rip two studs with it. And if that happens, then something else is happening. There was a catastrophe that happened. Not the fire escape. The fire escape is the last thing to fail. It'll stay up there until the wall collapses. You cannot, and it repeats itself every 4 feet to 5 feet. So think about that. Fire escapes have a 4-time redundancy. It has 4 bolts holding its treads. It has 4 bolts, or 4 connections at the top of the stringer, the bottom of the stringer. It's 4, everything's 4. Every 4 feet there's a new through bolt that goes into the building. These things are made to hold these guys up. You don't build anything. Everything you build is 40 and 60 pounds a square foot, right? Inside the building. This is 100. It's made to basically be the last thing to fall. And the ones that can use it the last is the firemen going up, because they're suited. They can go through fire. And they need just good grounding. Okay? So who have we taught this class? We've taught this class from Maine to Florida. And this was probably some of you may recognize, but I did this class 2 times already here. Okay? So I don't know how many people, but we just did MBCIA two months ago. Okay? So let's, I've taught building departments, I've taught fire departments, I've taught housing, and I do this from Maine to Florida, Chicago to Texas, and from Seattle to San Diego. Why? Because I've been in the business this long. Let me tell you how I got hijacked. First of all, my dad's 85, still in the ironworks business, and so that's why 50 years ago I got hijacked when I was 10 or 11 years old. So in '71. So that's my experience. I had to scrape and paint these things. Then I went to the theoretical side, because when I asked building inspectors, engineers, architects for help, I needed some questions answered. There was none. So a lot of these I had to go get. Once I got so much information, I created the National Fire Escape Association. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm just giving you guys information. So we're saving lives one fire escape at a time. As soon as you fix one fire escape in your city, thank you, that's it. Because now you've helped save a tenant, and you've helped save a fireman. If you continue on and you make it a stand that you're going to have your fire escapes, all of them inspected, and how do you know your fire escape is inspected in your city? Well, it's got one of these tags. So every fire escape that doesn't have a tag, guess what? You don't know if it's yellow, which I have here. I got tags, and I got red. So all these things, you got to make it simple for the tenants, for the firemen, for the building inspector, as they walk underneath any fire escape from now on. Make sure that's a white tag, right? So I've done these type of classes all the way across the country. Like I said, one of my first national classes was in Seattle. And so a lot of them have done and certified the fire escape. One of my model cities here, if you guys ever want to start this program right off the bat and ask a fellow building commissioner, call the city of Lowell, which we've done about 5 or more of these seminars specifically for them, and they have a national model. So if you want to just download it off their website, and we gave you a copy of it in your paperwork. Lowell is the #1. Yonkers, New York is the IFC version of the same thing, and both of them include load testing if it's required because the building has old bolts on the fire escape, okay? So, you guys remember this picture, right? 72, 73, won a Pulitzer Prize from the Herald Reporter. This is the shot that won the Pulitzer Prize. 72, Marlborough Street. That fireman saved himself with one hand. She fell to her death. Her niece landed on her. But look how much fire escape components are coming down, especially all that grading. In 72, IBC only says you must maintain your fire escapes at all times. Boston took it upon itself because of this. They said, hey, every 5 years check it. They became the only fire escape certification in the nation. Nobody else. Everybody else was maintained at all times, putting the requirement of having it certified on the owner. How many owners are maintaining all their fire escapes and then skipping it? Right? So this went to sleep. This went to sleep again, and it has its cycles. It wakes and it sleeps, and it wakes and it sleeps, and it's usually after there's some blood on the street. The blood of a child, the blood of a fireman, the blood of a worker fixing it. So we're going to show you some great examples today of how this fire escape, how it started as a great thing, you know, with Boston having an IBC ordinance. So they changed the code in Massachusetts only, not in New England. They were the only one that had the 5-year rule. That 5-year rule has now changed in 2012. The IFC has now a nationwide requirement that you certify your fire escape every 5 years. If your state is IFC, this all went, about 40 states took on the fire escapes through the fire prevention. 10 states, more or less, are still IBC controlling the certification of fire escapes, okay? So we teach both sides. Anybody see the Boston Globe ad? Not a month ago. This was on the front page of the Boston Globe and covering just fire escapes in Boston, but it represents every city, including your city, in the nation. Okay? So out of the 9,000 known fire escapes in the city of Boston, I'm going to take a guess how many this article says are certified as we speak. 1/3. So 3,000 fire escapes in the city of Boston have a certificate in the lifetime of certificates in the city of Boston. The MBCIA class, I've had for the first time over 20 building inspectors that showed up from Boston to the MBCIA class. Primarily forced there because of the fire escape issue that this Globe had just in that same week on a Sunday. So this was the real estate section. Now, how does this apply to you? You all have the same problem. Only about 1/3 of your fire escapes or less have ever been looked at for a different reason other than having a certificate on it. Tread fell, somebody got hurt, whatever it may be, that brought your attention not only to the building, but brought your attention to the fire escape. Okay, so I think we give you a link or a copy of the article there. So let's take a look at Rusty over here. By the way, this came out of an elementary school. This fire escape was replaced, and a piece of it was so bad, and this is where children would go down every day, and this is the actual condition that I got it. Okay, rusty over here, and the other counterpart is further down. So it was a private school in Cambridge, and this fire escape is the one that's there. No paint left on it. The children were not eating the paint, but every time they touch it going down the stairs, because this was the recreational yard for the kids. Every day they went up, every day they went down. Guess who told me to replace it? Was it the building official? Was it a fire official? It was the maintenance guy who convinced the principal to say, can we change this? And so it did get changed. This is what replaced it right here. All right? So what I did is I took this 4-foot wide fire escape, I cut it in half. And what I did over here is I saved this part that went into the ground. Look at all the rot. This is why when you guys get a chance to come up here during the break, it's rotting in the ground. So I saved it. The stairs going up, when I cut it and shrunk it so I can deliver it to shows like this, I welded it. I did what's called the welding witch doctor activity to it. So one half of it is done correct, the other half is not done correct, and I just took welding rods to it. Right? And the welding rods, which is illegal now, you can't weld fire escapes because that was the catch. You know how many welding witch doctors earn their income just by coming up, welding fire escapes, leave the rust, and just weld it together? Because in 5 years' time, you have guaranteed work. Because these welds would snap within 2 to 3 years because rust keeps growing, and it does what to these welds? Just snaps them. So this, it's like an annuity for these guys, say every 5 years they come in, almost passed. Just need another $3,000 to $5,000 from you and we'll get it certified. Who's gonna check? Well, nobody. You know why? In the city of Austin, you know who can sign off on these? Anybody with a G3 license. And who let them hang out in other cities? It was you guys. You guys said, oh, you got a G3 license from the city of Boston? So you can sign your own certificate. That Boston document that comes, it's online, is to the best of my information, knowledge, and belief, fire escape is in accordance with a building code? Yeah. So these welding witch doctors came in, and every 5 years they'd get some money. Oh, by the way, don't forget the orange paint is lead paint. So today, can we weld anything with lead? Burn anything with lead? EPA will give you a $37,500 fine. So 99.7% of every fire escape in the US ever built was with rivets, bolts, never welds. Welds don't last long on most fire escapes. So right now, if anybody's welding in your city, it already killed 2 firemen in Boston. I got the video to show you guys. But don't let anybody ever weld your fire escapes, because the welding guys are going to give you the terrible free on pricing. A typical 3-story fire escape could be to the owner who needs to get it repaired because he has somebody inspected. $3,000 for the welding witch doctors, $13,000 for an ornamental in the area that knows what to do, but not all that needs to be done to give it a warranty, and then $23,000 for a company that's going to give you a 25-year structural warranty on it. So what's that mean? What's that mean for anybody? Well, that means that these things have been fixed for 50 to 75 years with these welding rods. And they'll either burn a house down or they'll kill some firemen. In Boston, sadly, a few years ago, we killed 2 firemen because they were welding a fire escape. This is not the way to repair a fire escape. But what I did here on Rusty and Rusty Jr. over there, I'm showing, all the things that got done to this thing. All the welds, all the connections, all the pop bolts. You can still see the head on some of these pop bolts. So come and see what 75 years of neglect looks like, because I brought it here. Oh, by the way, we have the bastard cousin here. You guys have tons of these down in southeastern Massachusetts. I think the guy that does this still produces these these aluminum fire escapes. And so we're going to talk about these also, because as you know, there's a lateral load test that we have to do on some of these, right? On the railings. We also, see how light this thing is? We also have to have a minimum spacing on grading and thicknesses. This is a good 1/8 there. Doesn't rust though, but it's great. Oh, and these ladders, all of them are usually 9 feet above grade, not 6 because you can still climb. And it's a great way to build it if you like rivets and 1/8 bolts. With a minimum is 3/8 and 1/2 inch for steel. And a lot of times, this is the best part. The best part is that you guys make the ornamentals put in a 3/4 bolt. When this thing was removed, and that's why I kept it for this kind of show, they use a 1/4 inch, we call it, not molly bolt, they call it the butterfly. So it goes in, opens up, and then grabs the sheathing. And a toggle, is it a toggle bolt? So the toggle bolt is what holds a lot of these up. And the angles, instead of them being 2 by 2 by 1/4 underneath, they're 1.5 by 3/16. The angles that support these up. And then you guys asked us to certify these things. Pre-existing non-conforming. So we'll go into another session there, but southeastern Massachusetts, you guys have these in Taunton, Attleboro, Fall River, New Bedford, they're just, so we have to have a decision, and a lot of times I'm gonna ask the state to say, hey, would I certify that? The answer is no. Can you reinforce it to a certain degree? Not throw enough money at it, but you can throw money back to steel. So these became a very inexpensive way, and there's thousands of these guys, thousands. So much so that we kind of stay away from these things when they call and ask for certification. Because some building inspectors play the grandfather clause, and the grandfather clause says, it's there. So yeah, it's there, but it was built. It's substandard. So we'll talk about that afterwards. All right, let's, so this is what I did I got it to my 85-year-old father's shop. I cut it in half so I can travel with it. I did everything wrong. I welded everything. Okay, I just threw welds everywhere to show you what has been the norm, because it's the $3,000 option. You guys understand? So you got a ton of these fire escapes that have the $3,000 option for the past 50 years because it was the cheapest way in and out of this. Okay? So you have to, right now you can't weld because of the lead paint. But aside from that, don't let anybody ever weld. It killed 2 firemen in Boston. Don't let it kill a family or kill anybody in your area. Welding is not a preferred method of repair. It's an emergency repair to secure it, if that's your only option, and then you have to fix it with bolts. Fire escapes are built with bolts, you gotta repair it with bolts. You see a bolt, take it out. So I did that, that's all I did here, to make it a show and tell piece. This is pretty much, you know, what you're looking at that happens. A lot of times they leave the rust, the original bolt, they just weld the nose on a lot of these things. You know what I'm saying? Wherever. And sometimes they suspend it from above. They throw half-inch bars, square bars underneath, and they tack the hell out of it. And guess what? None of you show up to inspect it. You just see this piece of paper that shows up from a structural engineer who has a rubber stamp, and he gets, how many times when he drops, how much money does he get every time he rubber stamps something that comes from Joe Ironworks?
Grand.
$200.
How much?
$300. $200, $300.
What a grand.
Well, I've seen guys, and I'll tell you the story. It's like, hey, I need you to certify this fire escape. Yeah, dude, it needs a lot of work. Here's a grant. Yeah, it looks certified to me. Get some paint on it. So there's a grant later. So these things are being bought. Why? Because there's no confidence test. Again, you've got a copy of the Lowell one. Just take their insignia out, put your insignia in there, and then call them and talk to their commissioner who's did all these classes. And you can also talk to their, what do you call it, council, just to make sure that there's nothing in there that's illegal. But they have to put it through their council. I'm sure they spoke with the state also. All right, so let's keep on going. This is the weld. We call them the welding witch doctors. And they're killers. They killed 2 firemen in Boston. All right, so some of these other fire escapes that are certifiable at the time, when you got a rubber stamp engineer, or architect. By the way, all design professionals can sign off on your fire escapes. And in the city of Boston, and you hold a G3 license. You know what a G3 license is? It's to do little railings, little window guards, and then when they ask you today, hey, you doing fire escapes? You say, nope, I'm not doing fire escapes. Only to do fire escapes later, because what your G3 has let you for the past 50 years, not only pull permits in Boston, but some other surrounding cities, which they don't allow anymore. And also sign up on the docket, on the document that you get from the city of Boston for you to sign the certificate. It says design professional or fire escape mechanic. Guess who's a fire escape mechanic? A G3 guy. If you want to do a fire escape in Chelsea, you need to have a construction supervisor's license. Okay? So all the surrounding cities have pretty much put a stop to the whole, but Boston still allows G3 guys to fix it. Well, G3 guys to inspect it, give a price, fix it, collect the money. and also sign off on it without a permit. They may have tried, because of that NBCIA class that I taught 2 months ago, they may be now saying, oh, everything needs a permit. But none of you, when's the last permit anybody gave for a fire escape in this city? Look around. Nobody here has given a permit to fix a fire escape. So who has free reign at it? Welding witch doctors, fire escape guys. Some do it right, some do it wrong, and there's no double check. The double check is going to be the confidence test that has to be signed by somebody that's a third-party inspector to whoever's fixing the fire escape. So in city level, that's the guys you want to copy and paste. You can start as early as tomorrow. You can have a certificate in your hand. Copy and paste. Questions? All right, so these are just examples. For example, this one here is at the Chelsea house up in Chelsea at the top. So this is hammer testing. I believe this is Haverhill. Anybody notice? Well, this is me doing what's called a hammer test. Hammer test, by the way, somebody asked me a question there, when do they give out? This much, 1/16 fails in a hammer test. I use a 3-pound hammer, and I'm going to show you a video of us. So for our safety, we go up ping, 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 pong. A pong is when one of these have given way with a 3-pound sledge, baby sledge. It's for our safety. It's not a load test. It's a safety hammer test. Bang, bing, bong. We go pong, 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 and the thing goes like that. The more rust it has. So who's that going to hurt? Tenants going up and down. Firemen going up and down. And a lot of times they get these firemen going down. Because if they go going up, it fails, their foot goes through, they fall forward to the fire escape. But you know what happens when they're wearing 200, 300 pounds of total weight? And they come down, they step on that tread, it gives way, their leg goes through, and they snap their knee forward, not backward. I've had my first case was a fireman who fell through 3 treads that failed. Landed 1 floor below, came back up, saved some lady, but at the end of it all, he had permanently damaged his spine. So this pretty much, this type of non-repair, but that's City Hall in Haverhill. Back in the day, I'm sure they fixed it by today. But how many treads are missing on that right there? So where is it? It's in city halls. It's in city buildings. It's also on fire training towers. And I've shut down fire training towers. As a matter of fact, I load tested the first fire tower in the nation in the city of Oakland. They're the #1 safest fire tower. And what happened just across the bay? A fireman got blown off the fire escape because of the pressure, the standpipes. So after that, most towers shut down for training until they changed and upgraded their railings from 36 to 42 to stop that kind of event. Oakland was the first. San Francisco, even though it had a fire, still hasn't upgraded their system or load tested it. So there it is. This is actually Waltham or Watertown. Okay? This is what they were training firefighters and this is right at their location, the fire station. I think it's Waltham or Watertown. Anybody recognize this fire? Oh, this tower? No? So I went in, I inspected inside. You see the rust? This is on the inside because they get a lot of water, a lot of smoke training inside. You see the rust of the gussets here? How about all the treads I knocked out with my ping hammer? Okay, so I shut this down. See the caution tape there? Right? They shut it down. So what happened? How did these give way? Well, because they all look like this, and it's been 50 to 75 years, and in some cases 75 to 125-year-olds that can't take the hammer, or they're used as a pierce. So you can use this to write in calligraphy if you wish. So, and a lot of times, I'll use this one as an example. Look how much rust is between these 2 plates. That's a gusset. And so what's that bolt look like inside? Well, because I sadly have to be an expert witness, and a lot of times the jury has to see, the progression of rust. Okay? So with that, shut that down. This was the case of the fire escapes up in Chelsea, the Chelsea homes. This is my inspection of the Chelsea homes. You know when they finally got to it? It's a state building, 2 years later. Funding, this, but you know, if the hand grenades and bullets didn't kill you as a veteran, the fire escape almost got you. Okay? Let's take a look at this one. Oh, excuse me, I gotta go back one. It's an important,
Tonight, troubling information about this fire escape that collapsed in the Fenway neighborhood. 2 people were hurt when they fell all the way to the ground. And city records show that the building's owner hasn't filed a required safety inspection certificate since the late 1980s.
We asked a fire escape expert to take a look, and he says this could be just the tip of the iceberg. It was just before midnight Sunday. Some of the gratings on this fire escape on the back of 47 Hemingway Street gave way. Several people were on it. 2 of them were hurt when they crashed to the ground.
I see that there's a missing bracket, a single bracket that used to be tied into the rail, and it gave way, and I believe that's why pieces of the grating fell.
Cisco Meneses is the founder of the National Fire Escape Association. We asked him to look at the aftermath of the collapse. You can see where the bracket he's talking about used to be, and you can see the spot on the wall where it once was attached. He blames rust caused by a lack of maintenance.
The rust is what eats the steel, and I believe, based on what I can see right now, she rotted right at the building.
Why wasn't that caught? There is no evidence the fire escape was inspected and safety certified.
Right now, a lot of these fire escapes, if they're not being properly inspected and repaired, what happens is we have collapses like this.
Building owners in Boston are required to have their fire escapes certified every 5 years and file that certificate with the city. But when we searched the database for Boston's Inspectional Services Department, we found no certificates on file, at least since the late 1980s. A violation the building inspector has now cited the owner for. The inspector's report orders the owner to, quoting now, provide a fire escape and fire balcony affidavit forthwith.
There's more here on this other side that I can show you.
Just a short walk down the alleyway, Meneses found this fire escape with holes in the brick where support brackets are anchored.
There's 3, 4 supports not even tied into the building anymore. There's gaping holes. It's this big.
He says it's not uncommon for owners to skip inspections or for private inspectors to gloss over problems.
Because a lot of people, they collect a fee, $200, $300 for a piece of paper.
or 1,000.
Nobody's checking, and so what happens is, these are landmines ready to explode.
Rumbling crash I'd ever heard.
It was Laura O'Brien's first time standing on the makeshift balcony with 2 roommates during a party they threw for a friend's birthday. But the celebration quickly turned tragic.
My arms went over my head. I went down, straight down so quickly.
O'Brien survived the fall but broke her back. One other roommate was also seriously injured.
I could hear my roommate Nancy yelling.
Albert Sue was not so lucky.
First thing I thought was, that's not possible.
Sue's oldest brother, Min, spoke with us through tears.
I lost my brother.
Albert was just 22 years old.
It's a fire escape. Those don't fall off.
Then on April 11th, 3 months later, City Council's Committee on Public Safety held a hearing on the collapse.
It is a statement that our fire professionals brought to use fire escapes.
When it comes to a fire, the last thing you'll ever use is the fire escape because they have not been maintained.
New Hampshire.
Cisco Meneses, who inspects fire escapes for a living, points out how wires prevent this escape ladder from even coming down. The entrance is obstructed with flower pots, and the stairs are rusted.
These things are very dangerous. They're collapsing. They haven't been maintained.
Touring Portsmouth, where most buildings are well over 100 years old, it's easy to find crumbling, rusted out fire escapes.
So I inspect nationwide, and on average, 75% of everything I inspect has not been maintained. in at least 50 years.
He says 3 out of 4 fire escapes fail inspection. Meanwhile, New Hampshire is one of the few states that doesn't even have a mandatory 5-year fire escape inspection law. Manassas, who teaches fire safety, several years ago advised Oakland officials of the fire hazards in old warehouse buildings like the Ghost Ship Warehouse. That's where tragically 36 people died on December 2nd. Most were stuck on the second floor.
They had an egress issue. There was no fire escape on the outside.
It turns out the Ghost Warehouse hadn't been inspected in 30 years. A major reason that Oakland City officials are now being sued by victims' families. Since that tragedy, Portsmouth City officials have stepped up their inspections.
Oakland now is number 1 in the
Designed to
nation
save lives.
on fire escape
When a metal
inspection
section
and load
came loose
testing.
and
Number
fell on
1.
2 people. It may
Little
not look
blood.
like much, but it weighed an estimated 150
New York
pounds.
City.
Fatally struck in the head was 58-year-old Richard Marchart of Garden City, Long Island. As they mourned, work crews were back where it happened, erecting scaffolding on the sidewalk and keeping people back, while inspectors were seen jumping up and down on fire escape landings and
Got his
steps
hammer.
to test if they held.
Physically
That one looks
jumping
like
up
it's
and down.
fine, like you wouldn't look at it twice. It looks like it's in good shape, so
But it wasn't.
obviously not.
Investigators say it was a private inspector who accidentally dislodged the piece of metal that hit not only Marchart,
8
but a young
stories.
female artist. She was seriously injured by the metal. She was on her way here to a studio at the New York Academy of Art on Franklin Street.
Hank
The
Phillips, you're
smoke,
right.
the flames, and the frightened faces, all in a firefighter's line of duty. But Chief William Hitchcock remembers the night it wasn't the fire that almost stopped him,
I was scared to death.
but the fire escape that broke underneath him.
Where the railing just came away from the building.
And our investigation found across Massachusetts more unsafe fire escapes, rusty, deteriorating, crumbling, broken. And what state officials didn't know, the system they set up to keep fire escapes safe is also falling apart.
The potential ramifications are disastrous.
So let's look at this one. This expert ironworker is licensed to build, maintain, and inspect fire escapes.
So that over here,
For months, we examined dozens of them with alarming results.
looking at this today, would this pass inspection?
No.
In dormitories, at theaters, at homes, and apartment buildings.
Rust is actually eating away the metal of the fire escape.
Right.
And the bottom line?
It'll get weak and then eventually it'll fall.
This one has rotted connections. This one missing bolts, twisted metal.
Would the stairs come down?
No, never come down.
This one a broken tread.
So how dangerous is it for the people inside this building?
This fire escape is definitely going to put somebody either in the hospital or it's going to put somebody in a cemetery.
So by the way, that was my evil twin brother 20 years ago. So this is 20 years ago that we did this. And the reason she did it was the station night fire. You guys all remember the station night fire? That's the reason she says, hey, I want to tell people there's other ways out. You know, be safe in case there's a fire. Just use your fire escape. When I tell her that over 75% of every fire escape I've ever inspected in the nation fails the certification process for lack of maintenance. A majority of those, 75%, right, are original hardware, tons of rust going in it, but 25% of those have life safety issues, immediate life safety issues, or imminent safety hazards. Okay? So, we've been doing this for a long time. You guys have a great, one of the best IBC. You know how many of these 5-year rules anywhere? It's only a handful of states that follow this, and not well, because the IBC has been holding hostage the fire escape certification process for 100 years. And because it only affects tenants and firemen, how many deaths in the 100 years can we attribute to a building inspector falling or getting killed? So in 2012, the IFC took it over, finally said, oh my God, this is killing firemen and tenants, or injuring them at least, right? And who's been taking care of it? The IBC. Not well. You must maintain your buildings at all times, which means it's up to the owner to maintain their fire escape at all times. So you guys in 72, you guys put in the 5-year rule. And it was 1030 back then. Anybody remember 1030? As the maintenance of fire escapes, it was 1030. Now it's 1001.3. All exterior bridges, steel or wooden stairways. How many of you are certifying your wood stairways, which on average can only last 25 years well maintained to 35 years with some metal reinforcement on it? Forget nails. Nails just open up all day long. But if you've got gussets and you've got screws, and those wood staircases and sometimes deck merit have to be replaced 100% every 25 to 35 years. That's the lifetime of PT. Some of these things are regular pine, it's just being kept painted. And by the time the carpenter's ants get to it and the termites, yes, question. By the way, guys, raise your hands. I can talk all day long.
Why does it only mention egress balconies?
No, wait, I'm still reading, guys.
All right.
All right. So all exterior bridges, what's that? Anything that takes you over something. So you got a little brook in your house, and so that bridge. Going to your boat, it's called a bridge. Anything that takes you that is a pathway for anybody is a bridge. Steel or wood stairways, so you guys know the fire escapes is not mentioned. And then egress balconies, the crossovers, right? Shall be examined or tested. What's the word tested mean? There should be a definition here. If you can't find this definition, let me tell you where it lays. It lays in the NFPA. Since 1927, the authority having jurisdiction shall accept by load test or other evidence of strength, which means, hey, I've changed all my bolts every 25 to 35 years, kept the thing painted. I've silicone shut all the connections, which you couldn't do back when silicone wasn't around, because we had to have a World War II to create caulking in silicone. Okay? So now today's fire escapes finally get some caulking aside from just let me show you something. Aside from just paint. All fire escapes, heat, this is a nice bolt, right? That's why fire escapes are made with bolts and rivets. It heats up in the summer and does what? Does what to my paint? Cracks it, lets water and air come in for us to build rust. So when it heats, it needs to do this. When it cools, it needs to do this. And so what happens when earthquakes? Do you know Massachusetts area that has a lot? It's one of the top areas, not the top, but there's a lot of earthquakes here that are much smaller in California. And they do this also. Wind does this. As soon as they come in and weld it, what happens to my connection? And anybody here a welder? Well, they weld, snap, bolts stretch, but they still allow. But if you get enough rust in the inside, it eats the shaft. It does not eat the head, does not eat the nut. But in the middle, what do we got? A thinned out bolt. So this is what you guys got to remember, is why fire escapes are bolted, not welded. And anybody that comes in and takes an old fire escape and shuts it down with welds, without removing the rust. By the way, you think these guys who weld remove the rust? Whenever they get a problem, you can see right here, the guy has a 3/8 rod because there's so much space between the metal to the metal, they bridge it. So they bridge and they weld the tread, and then they weld the other side of the round rod on the other side, and what happens inside with all that rust? It stays there and grows 24/7. All right, so, and this is the NFPA. The authority having jurisdiction, 1001.7.2, so if you want to look it up, shall be permitted and approve any existing fire escape stair that has been shown by load test or other satisfactory evidence of strength. Why are we even talking load test? Well, we're talking load test because 75% of a load test is for the outside. And by the way, if you have new bolts, there is no load testing for 15 to 25 years. But the piece that goes back into the building over here, which you can't see, which is usually 8 to 12 inches deep, full of rust, and any water coming from the roof down between bricks, in that half-inch spacing from the veneer to the main structural, guess what it's doing? It's rusting the fire escape from the inside out. And a load test will catch a connection in the building. What about the danger of it? Well, if this connection repeats itself every 4 feet, like those girls that fell to the ground. One, she fell 30 feet. The other 2 of the people in that situation jumped into the window. The connection, that T-bar that came out of the wall, that was holding two gratings that were sharing it. That rotted from the inside out. And as soon as that connection let go, she and another person, one fell to the roof below, and she fell 30 feet with grading, chasing her on the way down. She survived. That's why there's a lawsuit as we speak today. So let's take a look.
Excuse me, who did that girl sue?
Oh, good question. So first of all, they can't sue you guys because this is a third party. It's supposed to be a third party inspection. All the liabilities on the owner.
So I understand it's the owner's responsibility.
Correct.
To have the certified certification, not ours. We have to approve what is being presented to us to have it certified, but it's the owner.
Yeah, it's all on the owner. Yeah, every one of these.
It's not on us.
No, not at all. You guys are. It's all 5-year certification is on the owner, and this owner, not having any certification since '84, is now in a lawsuit. They're just trying to negotiate it over because he already lost. By the way, in certain cases, your insurance company is not going to pay this because you didn't have what the law requires, and that's to maintain your fire escapes in 5-year certification mode. So just so you know, as a matter of fact, my first case that I did the fireman down in New York, two things. He was suing to get better compensation from the fact that he got hurt on an accident, right? But then he sued the owner directly and settled and won simply because this wasn't an accident that occurred during a fire. This happened to him because the owner did not maintain the fire escape required by law. Otherwise, a certified fire escape has never hurt or killed anybody. A properly certified fire escape, because there is some fire escapes out there that are not. You have a piece of paper on your records, but it's false. Go ahead. Somebody have? What was you?
Going back to the previous slide, I guess my question is, you're talking about egress balconies, not just the house.
Yeah. So it's any balcony. In California, because you guys know that Berkeley collapse, where everybody, there was like 25 kids, 7 died or 9 died on the ground. In all of California right now, they have a law, SB 721. All exterior wood-based structures up to balconies must be inspected every 6 years now. So a lot of these codes pop up when there's blood on the street. So, but yes, so if it's a Romeo and Juliet balcony and it's exposed, all exterior, ready? All exterior, steel and wooden stairways, balconies, bridges, bridges, fire escapes and egress balconies, correct?
It specifically says egress balconies.
Right, so this is the code. Yeah, it's called an area of refuge. So if you're going to use that to wait for firemen to show up with a ladder, because most of the balconies in Boston were built to cross over. Firewalls, we cross over, kick their window in, and we get to safety. So if all of a sudden you're going to use an area of refuge, if it's outside, and it must be maintained. And this covers it all, depending on how you want to look at it. So if you're going to stand on a balcony of any kind outside, it should be inspected by somebody. If you don't want to give it to the 1001.3, then give it to somebody else. This is IFC, by the way. So now, since 2012, every fire escape in the U.S. must have a 5-year warrant, 5-year inspection, and load tested. All right? So in 2012, now how many states you think today have adopted this thing that came out in 2012 on the IFC side of things? 20, maybe? California now in January is finally going to be forcing the entire state to inspect every fire escape. New York doesn't. New York City, they're their own empire. So just because it hits the state doesn't mean that the local cities are adopting. So when you overlap all the codes, testing and certification every 5 years on the international side, the NFPA says the authority having jurisdiction shall approve by load testing. And then when you international building code, it's testing, so all exterior fire escapes shall be examined or tested. So unless you overlap all 3 codes, the word testing has fallen way behind. Okay? So how many here have ever had any fire escape in their city load tested? One over there. 2. Anybody know this? You can use this whenever your OSHA code requires. This is going to fall to the vendors who are doing the work there. All exit routes must be maintained during construction, repairs, and alterations. What's this mean? This means that if they're gonna pull a permit with you on any building, the first thing they must present you, or it could be the last thing they present you, but it's the first thing they present you so they can do their permit, is that the two means of egress have been certified on that. They have their front stair, and they also have the second. If it's wood or steel, it must be certified before you guys issue a certificate. I mean, a permit. So this is one way you can immediately stop the process and to say, okay, you're pulling a permit, and whether it's $10,000 contract permit or it's $100,000, you say, have you certified your second means of egress? If it's exterior, steel or wood. And they'll say, no, I'm going to do it afterwards. So you can say, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to issue this permit, but put up some scaffolding now as your second means of egress, because that's all it says here. During repairs or alterations, employees must not occupy a workplace unless the exit routes required by this subpart are available and the existing fire protections are maintained, or until alternate fire protection is furnished that provides an equivalent level of safety. Could that be a fire watch? Maybe. It's between the building commissioner and the fire guy to say, what are we going to do with this building that is partially being renovated or totally renovated? And this is what you got to do, residentially or commercial. Just create another means of egress, which is a certified staircase put in by the guys who do this kind of work, and that's a 3-foot stairway. And there's the ones for vendors. Vendors have the 24-inch one because the building is empty. So they'll put up the scaffolding. If the building official and the fire official agree to it, they'll put in the 24-inch wide stairs for people to get out. Otherwise, there's no two means of egress, and you issued a permit on it. So this is one of the ways to start processing certifications is don't open a permit until they give you proof that they got alternative. Then this will help with OSHA. Or at the end, like Boston's doing, to close a permit, guess what you need? Certification. So you change the bathroom or the toilet, pull the permit on it, and guess what? Now there's trigger. So there's various ways that you can trigger, but permits is one of the ways. At the beginning, they have to prove they have two means of egress for the current tenants, for the firemen who are going to arrive, or it's going to be at the end, okay? To close the permit. All right, so technical assistance. This is, the fire escapes must be examined by design professionals or others acceptable to the building official. What is another? Here's your technical assistance. It's somebody that's in the business. It's somebody that has unique, let's put it this way, prepared by a qualified engineer, specialist, laboratory, or fire safety specialty organization, acceptable to the fire code official, and then analyze the fire escape properties and design operations to use in the building and the premises and facilities and appurtenances they're situated. The fire code official is authorized to require design submittals to be prepared by and bear the stamp of a registered professional design professional. Could be an architect or an engineer. Meaning, if you have somebody you trust that can certify the fire escaping as a specialty organization, and for some reason you can have them peer reviewed by a design professional. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of times you'll pick a structural engineer as the peer review. Questions so far? More machine gun information for you guys? Do my best. Ready? All right. Oh, the great grandfather. How many people here still have grandfathers? Or are you now a grandfather? So this grandfather clause is really lawfully non-conforming. And so what is lawfully non-conforming? Well, that currently in some of your cities, or every one of your cities, that's lawfully non-conforming. A fire escape certified by a simple letter, and this is all the letter says from a structural engineer. I have shown up at the site, I have collected a check. And to the best of my information, knowledge, and belief, which is my parachute, so I'll never see any of you in court, the fire escape is in accordance with Mass Building Code. Today. What about tomorrow? Pay me again, I'll be back tomorrow. So that's the greatest escape clause. And you'll never take anybody to court. To the best. And that's on the, if you go to Boston and you get that certificate from the state, that's all it says in there. To the best of my information, knowledge, and belief, the fire escape is in accordance with the Mass Building Code. You sign it at the bottom as an engineer, or you sign it at the bottom as an ornamental ironwork guy who fixed it and signs off on his own work with no permit, and you guys didn't do any final inspection. So some of these are in your city because somebody's rubber stamping, so they show up, And if something is falling, put it back up. You take any bolts out of your pocket? Nope. You run 100 feet of cable. You go. You collect 3,000, sometimes 5. 3 to 5,000 for these visits. That's why the most expensive, cheapest guy out there is the welding witch doctor. Because only he knows what he's going to weld and fix, and spends about a day. But he makes 3 to 5,000. It's a 2-day. And does he pull a fire permit for the welding on these 100-year-old structures? Okay. Well, they killed 2 firemen. Yes?
Does the National Fire Escape Association have a list of certified inspectors?
You know who the certified inspectors are? Everybody that's in your city. You know how many of them want to follow rules? So the answer is no. What we do have is we have people that we work with that will give you a 25-year warranty on their repairs, structural. Okay? Somebody else has to keep it painted, meaning the owner or the owners. So that's the problem right now. None of them, because they've been for 50 years out there on this. But some of the people that we certify, right? They're called our A group. Their tickets, whenever they speak with you at the city level, is that they're going to give you a 25-year warranty on the structural. So new bolts, everything's sealed, and they'll come back in for the next 25 years, and it'll pass, guaranteed to pass, or they'll fix it for free. So who are those guys? Well, we can tell you some of those guys and who they are, trained by the National Fire Escape Association. So if that's your question, there is, but it's a handful. Because everybody else in the B and the C side of things, sadly, they don't want anybody to fire. If the building officials are not watching me, why am I going to have you guys watch? Why, self-declared police, right? Why am I going to have you guys? So understand? So it's, and this is just starting now. Don't forget, the guys that have been fixing your fire escapes in your area have been the local ornamentals within, 10 to 25 miles, and they've come in with their welding machine. They've come in with some of the bolts. So what you guys are doing right now is changing. And how do you change? It's that certificate that you have from Lowell. When you have to fill that out, that's a legal document. It says you've left no rust inside any connections as an observer, as an inspector, design professional. So should something happen in the future, that document that you have to fill out is what binds you back to court and to those people who got hurt. Hopefully I answer your question.
Yeah, so we had an issue 10 years ago, the first time we started the certification. And then once the word got out that the town was doing certification, we had a company, I guess it was a fire escape certification company, that went around town and tagged every fire escape in town with a yellow tag, unsafe, please call this number.
Unsafe? If you have any tags out there, the tags are when people are looking at a fire escape, it's a prototypical tag, if that's what you're talking about 10 years ago. But as far as tags that saying it's unsafe, you can't go in and say that a fire escape there's been no examination. So that's the only thing. You can't tag anything. You can't just walk down an alleyway and say, hey, these fire escapes are not certified. So if you go back, and I don't know if somebody give you any of those tags, and if you have those would be great, but anybody who's tagging a fire escape as an awareness tag is different than somebody saying your fire escape is not certified. That you can't do. Okay? So, what's lawfully non-conforming? This is lawfully non-conforming. There's no bars here. But the way they built it 50 to 75 years ago, lawfully non-conforming. What's lawfully non-conforming? 2 lines on a without rails, without any pickets. But when we certify a fire escape, we certify it as the day it was installed. If the fire escape was installed 75 years ago, I got to certify it that day. There's no requirement for it to have railings that are 42 inches high. There's no upgrade of any kind. You're not going to 42, bars that are 8, you can't make them 4. Pre-existing non-conforming means every fire escape I look in any city is pre-existing non-conforming of the day it was installed. Can the owner voluntarily put bars and raise the height? The answer is yes. Can you force them? The answer is no. Any questions on that? So they call it, I'm grandfathered in. If this was built wrong 50, 75 years ago, you don't get to keep it. So wrong systems should not, don't get grandfathered in. Okay, question? Somebody have a question? In the back? No? All right, let's keep going. So, guys, all exterior, bridges, steel steel wooden stairways, fire escapes, egress balconies, and a lot of times egress balconies are the ones that cross over, crossing a firewall. Okay? So let's take a look. Fire escapes here. A lot of these are in parking garages. Fire escapes here. You guys see this one? I think this is one either in Taunton, Fall River, or New Bedford. This is an all aluminum fire escape. Looks pretty good. We've got stairs over here. You know, so come and examine a stair so you know what's going up. Compared to Rusty. This Rusty is probably 75 plus years old, 100. Okay, so but this came off one job. Kept it for this specific class, Southeastern Mass. Posts supposed to be on a frame. This post is secured to a piece of green. So there's no frame, there's nothing here, and you can. Okay, and these, you guys are asking for certification from structural engineers, registered architects, and this is all built substandard with rivets and 1/8. Question?
Person comes in, you're told that the fire escape's no good. Their design engineer says, we're going to go to design a new one, structural aluminum.
You're going to build a new one, structural aluminum.
Structural aluminum.
Okay, yeah, like this one. Like this one.
I mean, I'm hearing, I know about those, but you talk, a lot of the structural ones that are using structural aluminum that I'm seeing.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
They're, I feel strong that they're better for corrosion. What's your take on it? Because I'm hearing this message when you're talking about.
Yeah, the law.
That type of unit with what I'm seeing being done.
Right, just that type of unit. There is aluminum fire escapes built structurally sound. So here's so first of all, you're allowed to build all fire escapes with metal. Aluminum is metal, metal is metal, all right? So they're allowed. You can also build a fire escape to match the building type. So if you've got a wood structure, you can actually put in a fire escape made of wood, and it just has to have a nominal thickness of 2 inch, which is the 1.5 inches. Is that a true statement? Yep. Right? So that's a true statement. So the fire escapes here, and I examined this fire escape. Guess what holds it to the wall? Lag bolts. And we brought this up, I think it's in Taunton or Fall River, this fire escape. Built down here in this area. There's still people. So the key is it through bolted with a through bolt? 1/2 inch, 5/8 or 3/4. This one was lagged. So that's all it needed. The rest of it was fine. You understand? So can you build aluminum fire escapes? The answer is yes. So let's put a fire right here. Anybody know the melting point of aluminum? 1,000 degrees, more or less. The melting point of iron? 3,000, right? Most fires where the window finally blows out, and we got a little barbecue going on out of this window, right? So believe me, I like aluminum, but a fire comes out at 3,000 degrees. This will fight it. This will melt. That's the only, so you got to get out before, whatever it is. So I'm not against aluminum, but if you build it, and the majority of you guys have this, all residentials, this was the answer to turn your 2-family into a 3-family out of the attic, what was the answer? In some cases, stair, but come and check the bolts on this thing. They're all 1/8. I got rivets here, guys. And then, if you look, strapped to the wall, there's a pop rivet on the top, which is like a 1/16. And then these brackets that hold your physical body to the wall, look how big they are. I think it's maybe an 8, 3/16. But these bolts here are just an 8, popping through. Whereas mandatory, every single bolt here for treads must be at least 3/8 minimum. So there's only 2 sizes in these iron fire escapes. 3/8 and 1/2 inch bolts. And welds, by the way, because you're going to have a ton of your fire escapes. How do you negate a weld? If I don't like any weld on anything that I'm looking at, how do you negate it? Just add a bolt. I don't care about the weld anymore. As soon as you drill a hole through a clip of a tread and you put a 3/8 bolt in there, 2 on either side, you don't have to open up the weld. You don't have to do anything. Unless inside the connection is what? Rust. then they have no choice but to cut whatever remaining well there is, separate the thing, remove all the rust. Because rust eats the clip, rust eats the seat channel, rust eats everything. It leaves both sides. It gives to both sides. Okay? Okay, fire escapes. Some of the tallest ones, Chicago, 40 stories. 20 stories is the average. Here in Massachusetts, probably 15 feet, 15 stories. Okay?
I think the important thing to note is, especially if you go back to the last slide, is the difference between a full second means of egress and a fire escape. So if you go back to that last fire escape, I remember it well because that's Eagle Street, Fall River.
Okay.
And that was a series of 3 buildings. There were 12 to 15 units in compromise in those 3 buildings. And we required them to put in a full second means of egress.
Right.
Not a fire escape, the dimensions are totally different. And for me, if it's an existing aluminum, there's only 3 things that can happen. Okay? You can certify it and I'll accept it. Okay? You can, if it fails certification, you're putting in a second means of egress or you're going to appeal my decision. If it's a legal conforming existing fire escape, then you can make repairs on it. But if it's legal non-conforming, no repairs of any type. You're actually increasing the non-conformity of something that's not conforming.
Let's add, windows should become doors. There's all these things that happen. So here's somebody that has dealt with this, and what he's saying is a fire escape usually handles one egress. 3rd floor attic space, and you created some sort of fire escape system. No ladders. Ladders are not allowed. Everything must be a full set of staircases, maybe 2 feet wide, 8 and 8 rise and run. Of course.
Only if you're encumbered by lot lines. It's the only way you put a fire escape in.
Right. So fire escape is for one of the 3 stories, because the other 2 stories have an internal. A full means of egress, you're coming from the 3rd, picking up the 2nd, picking up the 1st, and it's got to be, a lot of times egresses are going to be 36 inches wide, 7-11 rise and run all the way to the ground. So a lot of these residential single-family homes that then became 2-family, then all of a sudden squeezed themselves into 3 families, primarily picking up the attic. This was the answer for the past 50 to 75 years, am I correct?
Correct.
Okay. Let's keep looking at this here. Still fire escapes, right? Still fire escapes? Oh, what about these? These still fire escapes, which means this is what the fireman has to go and get you. So it's called an area of refuge. Outside, all exterior, steel wooden balconies, bridges, right? Fire escape. So these are going to get inspected under this 101,001? Somebody want to say yes? That's either a state or anybody just, oh, we got a nod, yes? All in favor? What's your name? Bob. So if Bob says, everybody, yeah, this. All right, so again, how about hotels that have these long walking balconies, egress systems to get people off the hotel room? This a fire escape or an egress system? All in favor? Means of egress. Sorry, thank you. How about these things? So all these wood in the back of a house, that's the only way out? You know how many cities that are currently inspecting their wood structures in the entire state? And I'm involved in maybe 5. Reading is one. Anybody here from Reading? But you know what I'm saying? There's only a handful that are even acknowledging wood. Okay?
I don't think that's true. I think how many guys in the room are, requiring certifications for those? I know I am.
It just started in the past 5 years, right? Prior to that, we never touched the wood. People will tell me, hey, no, that's not what the building official wants. This aluminum thing up here, that's all he wants. I say, yeah, but this is out of the 2nd floor, the 1st floor. It's 7 feet or 8 feet off the ground onto a deck and then a stair. So these people use this deck to get out. And you know how many decks can be pushed at least another 5 years if you Frankenstein it with metal and gussets and straps and stuff? A lot. But then you give them the warning as a building official. Say, hey, I'll let it. Somebody else is signing off on this, but in 5 years I want a brand new one here, or go to metal. But otherwise, yep, you can go to wood, but you better replace this in 5. So it's almost like a reprieve saying, I'll let it go, but I see a lot of metal and a lot of screws. No more nails, no more machine guns. You know how many times I've seen machine gun wood systems, and the guy's 8 nails in a connection somewhere at the end, and then freezing thaw just went to the whole thing, All right, so you guys, so these are gonna get done from now on. Okay, let's, because that's part of it. How about these? This is in the back, and spirals and these decky things. So is this egress?
The question again, I can't tell if that's a single-family dwelling. We can't do the single-family dwellings.
Well, somebody from the state or somebody want to say, all exterior steel or wooden stairways. Did they mention for one family, two families? Or is this an exterior?
Those in the IBC, commercial warehouse.
Okay, so somebody can answer that question for him. I get told one thing.
110 inspections specifically, unless I'm called there. If I'm called there for a specific reason and I see it, now it's a different ballgame. But I'm not going driving around looking at 1 and 2 family homes and the egress components of that, 3 or more.
So anything that's 1 or 2, you guys, so the owner.
Unless you're called there.
Unless, separate code, right? So I'm just saying, just leave 1 and 2s alone for a while. Just keep it on 3 families and up. Okay? All right? So unless the building inspector is made aware, so should the inspector, structural engineer, registered architect, or certified fire escape engineer, right? Should they notify the city if they are doing an inspection and we're called out there for an inspection, maybe because there's metal on the right side, for example? Should we tell you guys that there's a wood in the back, including a deck, that is egressing that floor that's 8 or 10 feet above? Should we tell you guys? Okay, well, tell us to tell you that then. Because we get told by the owners, nope, he didn't say anything in the back. He said this only. Do not look behind the curtain. Right? All right, let's keep looking. So spirals, you guys want us to do primarily steel spirals, very few wood outside. You want us to tell you about the steel spirals that are also acting as the second means of egress on 3 and above, or sometimes on 1s and 2s? Inspect those too? All exterior? All right, let's do those. How about handicap ramps that only go up 5 feet on average? You want us to tell you about these? They're egressing out of these. You want us to talk about handicap ramps? All exterior steel and wooden stairways? Want me to tell you about this? They're saying no.
There's some standards.
Right, we are, but it's an egress. Yeah, it only goes up 5 feet, to get to whatever door it is. Do you want handicap ramps to be? I inspect these for substandard activity. A lot of them are wood. Some of them are cement and steel, but primarily a lot of wood. And again, maintain it. The key is I can tell them, hey, this is maintained. Somebody's going to get hurt coming down this thing. It's only 5 feet. So metal, steel, and a lot of these get put in homes for a period of time when somebody's handicapped in the home for a period of time. Older people, they rent these things out, and then the company takes these and puts them somewhere else. Inspect these? No, say no. Don't inspect them. Should we warn you about ones that are bad?
It's private property or commercial space.
You shouldn't be doing inspections on 1 and 2 family dwellings. That's a.
On these here?
Well, if you said somebody needs a temporary handicap ramp.
Typically,
No, it's just that. I know this is installed by different companies. These are rented units. I'm just saying, do you want us to inspect wood, like this wood one? Do you want us to inspect that? That's the key. At a home, for whatever reason, we're inspecting fire escapes on the back. There's a fire escape on the back. Because a lot of these single-family homes have been converted to 2-family, renting out the second floor. And in some cases, some of these single-family homes have been converted to 3 families, where the attic space has this huge thing and they stuck a fire escape on it. And we're called in to certify them. So we don't just inspect fire escapes that are commercial. We get called for 1 and 2, primarily 2-family and 3-family all the time because the city official has asked for a certification. So we don't just show up and say, hey, I'd like to inspect. We are called because somebody wrote a violation in this room. So catwalks. How about these things, these staircases that go up the tanks? Any of these should be inspected? Some of these industrial areas, don't inspect these?
Well, it's not part of the exit path.
Right. But they take care of it, and if it's broken, then they fix it kind of thing. Because like we said, it's only for a technician to go up and check something on the top of the tank, right? So it's not part of the exit. Well, that's how he gets down in case something happens up there. So again, we're just going over some. Anybody have a say on AC condensers on the top that have these little walkways or on the billboards, they have this catwalk always. Oh, no billboards, right? How about all exterior steel wooden balconies, bridges? This is bridges. This is in Chelsea Home over here. This is a private Bentley College. This is their crossover. So is that part of 1001.3? Okay, so this has never been inspected. In Chelsea, I know I had to do the inspections on the backside of all the other fire escapes, which are all certified by now, just so you guys know. But that bridge has never been inspected. Right? Wood decks on the back. This is the only means out for some of these buildings. These are 2 and 3 story. So I'm not talking about single families. So some of these, do I inspect these in the back? You know, this is a multi-unit, and this is one of the ways you get out of this one. And it's wood. Inspect it? 2 to 3 family? Part of the exit? Okay. Let's do this one. This just happened in Boston.
The news now to a terrifying tumble in Hyde Park. A woman falling more than 30 feet to the ground when that porch you see there collapsed. Now this morning, we're hearing from those who went running when they heard that porch plunge. 7's Justin Doherty has our story.
A frightening porch plunge in Hyde Park. Video capturing the moment a woman falls more than 30 feet off a back porch. 3rd floor stairs collapsing and the 2nd floor railing giving way. She then hit a car before landing on the driveway. Ariel Davis was inside the building when she heard the collapse and ran to help.
I was in my bedroom and I heard a loud boom, so I thought it was a car accident, and my little sister went to go open the back door and she was like, oh my god, so I went out and I saw my cousin's friend on the ground.
Fire crews also racing to the scene and quickly noticing the porch is in poor condition.
Anyone could tell that the craftsmanship isn't correct, and I don't know the age of it. So obviously dilapidated.
Davis, in disbelief, thinking it could have been a much different outcome.
If the car wasn't there, for sure, she would have probably broken her neck or something, so the car saved her, and it could have been my cousin too, and my cousin has kids, so that's just really scary.
The 28-year-old woman has just minor injuries. Crews say she was awake and alert before she was taken to the hospital.
This could have been a tragic case. Elderly lady, children. I'm hoping that this victim is okay.
Now again, that woman is expected to be okay. Again, just minor injuries, and city officials tell me they have condemned the entire back porch, so the whole thing needs to be torn down and rebuilt properly. In Hyde Park, Justin Doherty, 7 News Today, New York.
So because of that, just you guys do have some help. First of all, let me finish her story, and then I'll talk about the insurance company that insures some of these buildings and how they're helping you guys. So she, first of all, doesn't live in the building. She was visiting her friend on the top floor. She was going out the back stair because they use it every day instead of the front stair because you need to pass code or whatever. So she basically, this was all caught on a Ring camera that everybody has, to answer the door now on your phone. And so she just stepped on that, so obviously the stringer tops with nails just let go. So she fell down. And so when she fell down, what she had is a protective rail there to help her from falling. So she fell down, she was okay. Fell towards the rail, and the rail just let her go. All the nails were all rotten. I took several photographs of this incident after it happened. So she fell down. She fell another 10 feet. If you notice in the video, she bent the chain link fence pole that went across horizontal. With that, she smashed her head on the car and put a dent on the fender, and landed it in between the car and the fence. So she survived. So fast forward to the insurance company. The insurance company that was insuring that said, this just happened recently. What's going on? Why wasn't this certified? Because they're trying to find a way not to pay you. And if you don't have a certificate, which is required by code, what happens? What's the insurance company say? So, Brownstone Insurance, which handles a lot of condos in New York and in Massachusetts and primarily in the Boston area, they said, let's check on this. So, like the Boston Globe ad said, they started going through the every address that they insure. They went and looked at it, and they said, such and such address, no certificate on file. Such and such address, no certificate on file. So now you can't renew your insurance. So they're doing it for you guys a little bit. You can't renew your insurance unless you have a current certificate on file. So now some real estates are starting to step in, and you can't buy or sell the property unless you have a certificate on file. Because very often, somebody owns a property for 2 or 3 years, and then they have to get a certificate on their fire escape. I said, this is supposed to be part of your closing documentation. So they go back into the pocket of the real estate agent who has insurance, errors and omissions, and the owner who sold the building for $600,000 to say, what? We got $30,000 worth of problems here. And you didn't disclose this. So they go backwards in a lot of these sales. Once you guys show up and say, where's my certificate? They say, what are you talking about? I just bought this thing 3 years ago. So you know, there's several ways. But the insurance part is what's coming in the future. Just so you know, they sometimes don't listen to you guys. I don't know if that ever happens to you guys, where the owners, the homeowners don't listen to you, whether you're the city or the state, and they think they have a 6 months to 6 year reprieve on anything you guys decide they must do. But the insurance company says they're remarkable. You guys should hire those guys. You got 30 days to give me a certificate, or your insurance goes. And so they don't care about codes. They just say, yeah, we're not insuring your building unless you have a certificate, which the code says it must do every 5 years. So Brownstone Insurance was the first of many to come to help you guys with this code. Okay? Questions so far? Ladders, short ladders. I want you guys to tell me, what do you do with these short ladders that are 8 to 9 feet above? And it's in the code. When they built these, you know what it said? You can build a full system all the way down, and at the 9th foot mark, you can have an alternative means to the ground. So it's either going to be a drop ladder, a fold-out ladder, but the continuation to the ground after 9 feet can be an alternative, cantilever. So guess what everybody read in the code 50, 75 years ago? They said, oh, the code says I can build it up to 9 feet. They never mentioned the other, you must get the public way, you must get the grade. So little old ladies, can they jump 9 feet? Little kids, can they jump 9 feet? Frail women? All right, we got a joke on the crowd. Very good. And that's what you have to, so guys, I just need an answer. Somebody give me an answer. When these come, I call this a missing component of the fire escape. All you have to do is continue. All you have to do is continue. I thought it was mine. Everybody went. It's a standard ringtone for most people in here who don't have time to go get another ringtone. They got 5 phones, I'll have iPhone. All right, so with that, tell me guys, what am I going to tell these people who I said, listen, the rest of the fire escape is fine, you got new bolts, it's all painted. This is missing 9 feet. Little old lady who lives on that 3rd floor cannot, she barely can get out the window anyway. But if she did, and she got a granddaughter with her, she can't jump 9 feet without breaking a hip. And what do those people who break hips? So should I continue? I'll get to your question in a second. Tell me, am I going to continue this? Is this a missing piece of a component? It must come to grade, right? With a fold-out ladder, a continuation of the same ladder, just extend it with some angles. An angle here, 2 by 2, an angle here, 2 by 2, and then some cross members that go across. These are easy to continue. Doesn't look the same. It's not supposed to look the same. It's supposed to get you to grade. Otherwise, if you have people breaking in, you want to do a fold-out. Your first.
Wow. You can't add on to that.
Oh, hold on a second. This is grandfathered.
Right. So
lawfully non-conforming. I'm telling you, I don't allow it.
If it can be certified, I accept it. If I get certification on that, just the way it is, I accept it, walk away, have a nice day.
I know.
I'll never give permission to add on to that. Again, you're increasing the non-conformity of a non-conforming structure.
It's missing its component. I've had this question before. If it's a missing component, it wasn't built right 75 years ago. The whole thing was built right. This is supposed to have a portion of it, a fold-out ladder as a continuation, or just continue it 6, 8, 9 feet to the ground. He's saying no. You see, so it's not me. You guys talk to each other. Somebody talk to him. Who is this guy?
You can appeal my decision, and we'll take a ride to Boston.
Yeah, let's do it.
And they'll probably rub a stamp in.
I don't sign on these guys. I always put the call on the AHJ. I always say the AHJ will determine whether or not he's going to accept this, because this is conditional, or I make the city official give me a guidance, because this is pre-existing, non-conforming, acceptable to the AHJ. I should say I don't sign off on these, but
To me, it's either certifiable or it's not.
okay.
If it's certifiable, walk away, have a nice day. I've got the affidavit from the structural engineer. I'm not a structural engineer. I'm not going to argue with him. If he states that that's certifiable, that's all it states in the code. But nowhere in the code does it say you can add on to a ladder.
I know, it's never going to have that information. But this fire escape, built in 50 years ago with a permit, it was acceptable to the building official for 50 years. I just make them aware that there's a missing component, meaning the ladder, so I can go here, certify this whole thing, check every bolt, make sure everything is super tight, and I just tell the client, listen, you're certified pending the AHJ's decision on extending the ladder or leaving it as is. Because, dude, guys, look, I got an aluminum ladder. They're all 9 feet from the ground. These aluminum ladders are usually up there, and you have to jump 9 feet off of one of these balconies. So I understand in your city, by the way, what's your city?
North Attleboro.
North Attleboro, yeah, we've done a ton of these in North Attleboro, ton. So the key right now is, that's one guy that would say one thing. Anybody else would allow me to extend the balcony? I mean, extend the ladder. So here's somebody saying to extend. So AHJ tells the owners what they will allow, not allow. So you will allow them to jump 9 feet to the ground. Understand? That's not my decision. I certify from here to there. I need help from AHJs over here. Question then.
That was built under a previous code cycle and is allowed to remain, okay? So we have no jurisdiction to go over there and say, you need to extend that component. It was allowed through a previous code.
Okay.
That's what we hang our hat on.
And I'm hanging my hat on saying the code said after 9 feet from the ground, you must continue the ladder all the way to grade. I'm certifying it as of the day it was installed. The day it was installed, the only thing that they missed, and they sabotaged the code back in 50 to 75 years ago, where it said, at this point, what I'm supposed to do is put a balcony here, a small balcony, and then I'm supposed to have a fold-out ladder, the ones that, because people are breaking in. That's how the code, so I'm just telling you, 50 to 75 years ago, 98% of this fire escape is certifiable and I'm ready to go. I'm having a question, I need help from the AHJ, because there's liability here when an old lady and a little kid gets hurt when they hit the ground. I want to be able to say, the AHJ said it's grandfathered in, and I don't need you to extend it.
I had a fire chief tell me one time that his theory behind the whole thing is, okay, you got a young mother, she's in that third floor unit, she's got 2 kids, you better decide which kid you like the best, because you're only going to get out with one of them, you're not going to save both.
Exactly, and so if you want to speak with your fire chief.
I mean, does it matter? I mean, I just have difficulty, because nowhere in the code am I allowed to issue a building permit for an addition to that ladder, because as Glenn said, fire escapes can no longer incorporate ladders. Pre-existing condition, fine, certifiable, yes?
Yeah.
I walk away.
The ladder is missing a component. That's all I tell the city officials.
It's a repair.
It's a repair. It's a repair to a component. So, guys, I'm not the code guy. Speak with each other.
Yeah, it is. It's a repair. And you
So
don't
you issue a permit for that?
You don't need one.
It's a repair. It's a missing component of the system. And as soon as this ladder...
If you're going to repair a deck, if you're going to repair a set of stairs, you need a building permit. You don't need a building permit to repair a set of stairs?
Normal repairs don't require.
Routine maintenance.
No. Ordinary repairs. There's a difference.
Well, you could be talking about something different than I'm thinking about. But you don't need a permit to repair that fire escape.
Right. Routine maintenance. You can scrape and paint it, change bolts.
You just said scrape it, paint it, change bolts. You can't add on to the ladder.
Yeah, no, that ladder originally should have gone to grade.
That ladder under the code in 1950, when it was built, should have gone to grade. I just finally caught it. Nobody else caught it in all the examinations. I don't make a final decision ever on these things. Missing components or repairs, as you call it, I come back to the AHJ and you support me and say, you know what, leave it alone.
Do you agree that you should be able to?
Yeah, you should bring it to grade. And so, but again, I find thousands of these where they don't come to grade. Thousands of those that they don't come to grade. I'm just telling you, I will speak with every individual inspector and say, you tell me whether this is going to get grandfathered in, because I'm telling you, it's 98.5% certifiable. This is good. But in 1950, this thing was supposed to touch grade after 9 feet. It's supposed to be cantilevered, drop laddered, fold out ladder. It's a continuation, and it mainly because people were breaking into the building. So a lot of these people, even if it was that long, they cut these things anyway after 9 feet. I've got a lot of these where you can see the physical cut mark on a ladder that used to come to grade. They just cut it because people are breaking in.
That was for security.
Security, which a fold-out ladder will take. Question?
50 years ago, it wasn't a uniform building code. Each and every city and town had their own code. So that might have been built to the code then.
No, yeah. I certify as of the code back 50, 75 years. So let me give you another issue. Same fire escape, but all the railings are 24 inches. Do I grandfather that in? Or was it built wrong the day they installed it?
Is it certified?
If you replace it.
That's just a structural question. That's not a code question. So when you certify a fire escape as a design professional, two things. Is it structurally sound, must be kept painted, and is there any code violations on the day it was built? So if they built a crappy fire escape that is structurally sound, but the railings don't match 1950, the ladder didn't go all the way to the ground, we come back to the building official who has their constituents to deal with and say, what do you want to do here? I just need some assistance from the AHJ. Some say it's okay as is, because I need to not go to court. You guys don't even go to court because you guys have some sort of protection. It's a third-party inspection. I'm just letting you know that I go back. So I have one city that says, hey, you extend that, we're done, give me a new staircase to the system. And I have some people saying, oh, it's a repair, here's your permit to whatever. And by the way, and like you said, nobody pulls permits to fix fire escapes. Right now they do here or there. Yes, sir.
What code or what law states that ladder at one time had to go to grade?
I don't have the code right by second, but I remember reading it. It says that it can be built, the whole system can be built. It's one of the older code books, most likely, that I was at feet. And then at 9 feet, you have the choice to have an alternative to the ground. And the alternatives was a sliding ladder. So a lot of these fire escape ladders have a ladder that sits right on it. And as soon as you release it, she slides right down and hits the ground. That's a slider.
I've been a code official for a long time, and I've never seen this. I just like to know where it came from. That's all.
You must, all egress systems must be to grade. So I challenge you now. Where in the code does it say that I can stop my egress stairs? Can I stop them 9 feet from the ground and you jump the rest? That ladder. Where does it in the code says that I can stop at 9 feet?
It doesn't say.
It doesn't say. So it becomes one of these. You must get to grade and to a public.
Right. But the problem we have right here, the way you describe it, or the problem I have is that was done under a previous code.
We know.
That previous code, whatever it was, before my time, said 9 feet, or 8 feet, or 7 feet, so that's where it's at. That's why they were allowed.
No.
We cannot grant them permission to extend something that doesn't perform.
So I'm just telling you that I read this in my vast, where it is right now, I don't have it in front of me. So the same way this does not end on a public way, this does not land in a public way because you must go to grade with all your egress systems must go to grade.
That's for brand new construction. You're talking two different things. In
Back
the
in
code, it does not state that. All it talks about for the existing buildings, first and foremost, you're in the wrong code because you need to be in the IEEC. Okay? If you go into the code for new construction, you're in the IRC with the commercial amendments or the residential amendments. And both talk about it in Article 1 of both of those. Look at 110 inspections. That's where you'll find it. Any part of the administration.
But new construction, I totally agree.
Well, so for existing construction though, there's only 3 things you can do. And I'm telling you, I didn't know that before now, but I was with these guys in Florida and we dealt with it for years. Specifically when it first came out in 2005. It came out, it started with second means of egress, okay, fire escapes, all that stuff. And Joe was the one who we actually stopped or recommended to people. First and foremost, we were saying, appeal our decision, please. We'll go to Boston. How many times did we lose up there? Yeah. We lost every single time because the board would say, no problem, we go along. But they couldn't back up the code anyway because it's not in there. And that's the problem.
Would you certify that as an acceptable second means of egress?
I would certify that as a fire escape. That's not a second means of egress, that's a fire escape. That's a pre-existing non-conforming fire escape. And if I can get a certification from a structural engineer, design professional, or anyone suitable to the AHJ, that's verbatim or very close on the code, I would accept it. But if somebody comes and says, I have two right now, where they took a ladder, a piece of shit ladder like that, a Werner ladder off the building, and they moved it to the other side with a big steel, and I go out to do the certification, I'm like, what's going on? Oh, well, we did this. You can't do it, fellas. You gotta make sure you know what you're certifying. And there's a big difference between a second means of egress and a fire escape, and people have a difficult time with that distinction. It's right in the code, it's right in Article 1 in both residential amendments and in commercial amendments. And there's a big distinction between the two.
One more thing you said on this, and that is, I'm trying to
They're
push on
using that.
business.
No, no.
A lot
That's
of
my
these
second
days,
needs. If they're using that, they're saying that's my second needs. No.
No, this is, fire escape is their second
That's a
means.
fire escape, period.
yeah, that's not a second means of egress.
Second means of egress. But if it, okay, so that third floor unit that's servicing with the window and the ladder, that's no longer allowed in construction.
Today.
But if that's certifiable, that's perfectly fine. If they-
Pre-existing non-conforming.
Grade, or that fire escape as the system certifiable,
That wouldn't be acceptable as their second needs.
Okay.
well, it's acceptable as a fire escape. Okay, I mean, I guess we're talking semantics, yeah, I would accept it.
So question there, and then over here.
Looking at some of those pictures, and I would say, and there's no question about it, they shouldn't have fire escapes. They should be enclosed stairwells. That's what should be on most of these structures.
Right.
Instead of,
This-
that one picture you had coming down, what'd you say, 20 stories or something? That's ridiculous. That should be an enclosed stairwell.
So fire escapes, all these buildings were supposed to have been knocked down and replaced by today, but somebody invented duct tape, bubble gum, paper clips. And so these structures that are not supposed to be 75 to 125 years old, 75% of them are chocolate vanilla answers and questions. 25% of the time I will see this happening where an architect, an engineer, or others acceptable to you to certify fire escapes will come in with a question. And a lot of times, every city official says, what's the best solution here to at least get it safer? Whether it be extending the ladder, whether it be the last piece being a stair or whatever, turning a window into a door, whatever it may be, that happens 25% of the time. I don't make that call. I always ask assistance from the AHJ. Question?
We have a retired building inspector, Bill Morris, in the room here. Can we ask you what he would do? Are you sure you want it? Are you sure you want that?
Yeah.
Come on, Bill. Come on, Bill.
Tease the yard.
All right. You talk about fire escapes from 1958 or whatever, that you saw that it had to be whatever, okay? That could be true, but that was under the city ordinance or a town bylaw. There was no building code prior to 1975 in Massachusetts. So no one in this room can enforce any of that requirement whatsoever. Other than Chapter 92 under 148 says, you must maintain in accordance with the code it was constructed in. So that's it. So you can't enforce a lot of this stuff because you can't write it and cite it because you don't have the capability. In 1982, it used to say on fire escapes that ladders have to be a minimum of 6'8" off the ground. Minimum, and in the building code. That's where that height came from. It was in the third edition, that you could not have it any less than 6'8" because that would get headroom. The reason for that is that they don't have the land. It was meant for the city of Boston or somewhere else like that to do it to not replace, but before the collapsible stairs.
Alleyways.
You've got to understand you can't use the building code, the IBC, for fire escapes. You can't go there. Actually, if you go there, you won't find fire escapes, will you? It's in Chapter 34. Chapter 34 has Chapter 1. Massachusetts amended Chapter 34, Chapter 1 and 34 to amend it about the 5-year certification. Are we on the right track? Yep. So you can't enforce anything new on a on IBC in an existing building, you cannot enforce IBC in chapter 10. You are aware of that? You cannot look at chapter 10 in an existing building. What you are allowed is chapter 1, there are 3 items. And the only thing that it mentions about means of egress is 2 items. Do I have 2? If I need 2, and are they wide enough? And you all agree with me?
Yeah.
If you go in and say the stairs are wrong, the headroom's wrong, or anything else is like that, you're in trouble. Because that is not a winnable case of appeals. You can't cite it. So with this discussion, as long as you get that 5-year certification, it is the due diligence of the professional engineer to look at this and say, okay, it's being maintained in accordance with my research. And the only qualified people you should be allowing a letter, if you accept a letter from qualified people, it should only be anybody that's in the building code, i.e., certified engineers. Registered design professionals. They're in the building code. You agree?
Yep.
Now, once you leave there, you go to 110 R1. You're allowed to accept something from a testing lab because they're in the book. I wouldn't, but you can. Then you can accept the technician because they're in the book. It's there. You can. That's R2. R3. Modular homes. You accept the label, correct?
Yep.
Because it's in the book. R4. Timber. They cut the tree down in the yard and build a house. You can accept it because Massachusetts certified that. Sawmill. So, R5, you can accept it from a licensed builder. If you choose to. I wouldn't, but if you choose to. That's your choice. And then R6 going R7, another building inspector. Certified building inspector can come in if you choose to accept that. But as far as anybody else giving you a letter that a fire escape is safe, you put it in that document, I would do it. Because it's there. So with this, all of this, that headroom was there, it was 6'8", but there's nothing prior to 1975. And chapter 10 does not apply to that building. Thank you.
Great job. There's always something learning from all here. I learned a lot. But listen, see this, guys? Every ladder question that I have is not 6'8". Every ladder question is 8 or 9 feet because people can't put their hands on it. So I have never seen these, but this is an example. See that one right there? Maybe it'll come up. Yeah. That is this balcony. That is this ladder. That is, as you can see, it's a little bit more than 6'8". So the question now still becomes, do we extend until we hit the minimum of 6'8"? Because I'm going to have to go back and do my research to find out where I read the word 9 feet. Because that's what I find. A lot of them are at 9 feet. So that ladder, that balcony, and the brackets on that one is 1.5 inch by 3/16 on average, if not 8 on the brackets. Metal ones are a minimum of 2 by 2 by quarter thick to hold up firemen and people. So let's keep moving forward. Somebody mentioned the Home Depot ladder. Is this allowed? This is a slider. This accordion ladder is out of California. You know why we don't have them here? In case they freeze in a rainstorm and it freezes, guess what you can't use? These accordion ladders. So if they get water and they freeze, these things are blocks of ice. So that's why they're not here, but they're predominant in California. Accordion ladder, that drops by itself. But Home Depot ladders to a window, allowed or not allowed?
Even Craftsman ladder, but I don't know about Home Depot.
A Warner ladder, right? So here's the thing. You have to have a balcony outside your window so you can prepare yourself to use a ladder. These showed up on a Saturday or a Sunday, these ladders. Okay, guys? So it's my question always to the city official is, if you look on your files, there's no permit for this ladder. It was not built to code 50, 75 years ago, and the homeowner installed this ladder. So in some cases, this triggers, I need a new egress stair, fire escape, which is usually 24, if that's the only place you're emptying is at that attic, it's going to be a balcony, an egress stair, 24 inches, 8 and 8 rise and run all the way to grade. right? To a public way then. Or some city officials have allowed the balcony to be put outside that window so the person can get out the window, stand up, get themselves ready, and then they go down the ladder. Comments? Yes, no? Some of you are yes, some of you are no?
Again, you just said it's not 24, it's 22 inches, and that's a fire escape.
Right. I said
If you're not encumbered by lot lines, that picture on the right, full second means of egress. So platform, door to a platform,
So you want 36 inches wide?
it's not what I want, it's what the code requires.
7-Eleven.
You can't install a new subfire escape.
I can install a fire escape on here.
Not unless you're encumbered by lot lines.
Fire escapes are not subject to lot lines.
The only way you can install a fire escape legally is if you're encumbered by lot lines. Because the fire escape, the dimensional requirements are much different than a full second means of egress.
Correct. Right. So my question is,
You have to have an issue with lot lines, otherwise you're going to put it in full second.
I get these all the time. My question to any city official, including yourself, are you going to let them put the balcony, pre-existing non-conforming, how you want to treat the pre-existing? I need a balcony up there and then a ladder, not the aluminum ladder. I'm saying metal ladder coming all the way to grade.
No, ladders cannot be incorporated into construction.
But it's pre-existing.
The one on the right, I recently had one of those, the homeowner installed it, she had 2 one-year-old children. I asked her, which kid don't you like?
Great
Let
question.
it decide, because there's no way you're climbing down that ladder holding 2 kids.
Right.
They changed it after that.
There you go. So, question over there?
You said the one on the right, pre-existing?
Pre-existing non-conforming. I don't know when it got installed. No, to me, I'm not going to make the final decision on that, because I can verify that the ladder was installed structurally, right? But then it's supposed to have a balcony outside the window so you can get prepared. Because what I do with people that have things, I say, show me how it works. I have the landlord show me how it works. And you know how hard it is to basically get your butt out this window and then find that rung and go down that ladder? And like you said, you better not like whoever you're leaving behind, because they're not going to get out. And you only got 3 to 5 minutes before the smoke kills you and then the house burns on you. So I'm asking you guys, we are here must be structurally sound, must be kept painted. Every bolt, every connection gets looked at. The rungs get looked at. But this is a code question. I don't answer code questions. I go back to city officials who have a hard line in one city, but then some other one said, you know what, I know Joe, let it go. You know what I'm saying? So that's my question. These come up from structural engineers. And anybody that's looking at these, structurally sound must be kept painted. That's what we're there. Code is, to a certain degree, was it code compliant on the day of its installation? If it's not, which is that one it was not, I go back to the AHJ, say, help me here, what do you want to do with Joe? And you guys decide what happens with Joe. I just need to document it that you guys like Joe better than Brown. Okay? Guys, this is still in existence. Elizabeth, New Jersey. 10 stories. Ready? Ready? You've never seen one of these. Ready? I don't know of anyone in the city that has this. Ready? Built this is a 1900s building. Let's see what those guys are pushing open. Wow, look at that. What is that? It's a slidescape. 10 stories. And by the way, you don't get a potato sack to jump in and go. And sometimes in the middle of the corkscrew, you fall forward. So now you're going down head first into this. And if there's a jam or a block of any kind, where too many people block up the sausage and the building's on fire, guess what? It's a human sausage roll all the way down. Then at the very bottom, and I went through this exercise here, there's an iron door with a huge paddle that you supposedly come down either with your head first or your feet, and you're supposed to hit it with your feet, and this huge iron door just swings open, and then you go down a straight slide 45 degrees to then a door to the public way. I didn't certify it, but this building built in 1905 has what's called a slidescape. Slidescapes used to be an answer. It was in the code. It's no longer in the code. But you had slidescapes that were part of the egress solution in the 1900s. Okay? A lot of military would have these on military locations to get the guys out of the second floor. Not very, imagine this, like, being in school, and every now and then you would you would get to slide to recess. That 10-story building, when they used to heat it up with coal, and the kids, as a rite of passage in high school, they always used to sneak in, go to the top floor, right? And these were all Catholic high school kids. And they would, you know, rite of passage is you snuck in, you went to the tent, you jumped in, you went all the way down. So finally the guy was sick of these kids, and so what he used to get coal dust, because the thing was heated up by coal back in the day. So he would put coal dust, knowing the season that when these kids are supposed to break in, go up to the top and slide down, and you know, they'll all be wearing, you know, white clothes, and so he knew what kids were in his building, because everybody came out full of that soot, and that soot that got on your clothes, got on your skin, so he would always know when kids were breaking in and doing that. That's that tall building. All right, oh, where's this? What's this? This must have been a fireman that did this one. Guess what college this is? Rutgers University. The first and only ever. And I think this is a dormitory. I'm like, you guys still want to keep this here, or you want to convert it? Pre-existing, non-conforming, slide pole fire escape. Built in the 1900s. And everything kept evolving. Just because things were built once doesn't mean they but this is a fireman, so unless you're training kids that belong to firemen, this is a slide pole fire escape, the only one in existence. And Rutgers, it's still up. Rutgers did not change it. Okay, this is another thing that we need to talk about. These are aluminum and or throwback. These are not second means of egress, guys. And I've got to certain situations where in the bag, in the corner, there's one of these, and somebody said, that's my second means of egress. This is not. This is a supplemental means of egress. You can have this in every room you want in your house, but you need a real fire escape to get out of a building. But some people think this. And so whether you're climbing out and fixing yourself or whatever, these are very difficult to go down. But it's almost like having a fire extinguisher. Better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. So supplemental. Never grandfathered in as the second means of egress because you bought the house this way. Never. Spirals, inspect them all. Cantilevers. In your city, if you have a cantilever and it has a chain on the back of weight back to the structure in any way, it's out of balance. So what you're supposed to do on a cantilever is supposed to be perfectly balanced. It's called a balanced cantilever with a release arm on it. Some of them that don't have the release arm on it, you step out 1, 2, and guess what happens? It comes down by itself, 2 to 3 feet per second. If you have a release arm on it, what happens is it's usually 3 to 5 steps before the pivot point. As soon as you release it, she starts dropping by herself because she weighs 25 pounds on the nose. And she comes down slowly, 2 to 3 feet per second, hits the ground and stays down. So you, as a parent, can go down, get yourself self-evacuated, get out and go to a public way, far away. The firemen arrive and what's down on the ground for them? This perfectly balanced cantilever fire escape. And what happens is now they come, they run up and do whatever. Are you guys aware that if you speak with your fire chief, fire marshal actually, or fire chief actually, they're all told in classes, every single fireman is told in classes today, in case of fire, do not use the fire escape. You aware of that? Every single fire person being trained. And they have towers that have fire escapes and they're trained on it a little bit. But they say, use your own ladders, 10, 20, 30 feet of your own ladders, and use your fire trucks that come in with a nice lift if your city can afford one. And does that take usually longer than 3 to 5 minutes for the smoke room that kills everybody? So every fireman is taught today, because we haven't been watching fire escapes for over 75 years, in case of fire, do not use the fire escape to save anyone, because we don't trust fire escapes. So what's going to stop these firemen from that, and we're going to talk about this shortly, is a tag, a white tag. Some cities do this already. They tag their fire escape. How do you know a fire escape is not certified on a building? It doesn't have a tag. Elevators have tags. Fire extinguishers have tags. If every fire escape, if a fire escape is a fire protection equipment. Does all fire protection equipment need a tag as per fire code? And fire escapes. In the West Coast, fire escapes fall under fire protection, and all of them are supposed to have a tag. So imagine you walking down, the rentals in the building walking down, the fire official walking down any street, looks up, has 10 fire escapes, sees 9 of these tags, and sees one without a tag. He doesn't care whether it's certified or needs minor repair. He just knows that he needs to write a violation on that one. As long as he knows the address, he does not need to get near it, because it's a third-party inspection that determines it's certified. Not you guys from the ground saying, this doesn't look so good, let me write a violation. If there's a 5-year rule in Mass and it has a tag, guess what? It makes it easy for everybody concerned as to whether or not it's an easy do. Oh, look, that one building down this alleyway doesn't have a tag, let me write them up. Requesting what? Because you saw something bad? No, because the law says what? You need to have a tag on it. Tags. If it's under repair, yellow. If it's a problem building, problem landlord, it gets a red. If it has a life safety, it gets a red. If it has imminent danger, it gets a red. Now, the building inspector and the fire marshal together determine whether there's going to be an evacuation of the building, determine whether or not there's going to be a fire watch. Do we get involved? Nope. Just put you guys together. He can lie to you guys, because most owners lie to us. We try not to lie to you guys, because we say, we find bullets of repairs and problems. And sometimes the owners tell us, if you find any bullets, give them to me, I'll give it to the building inspector. Guess what happens? So we decided to now say, before we even inspect the fire escape, we'll call your city and town and say, hey, you violated this, right? You want us to tell you what we tell this building inspector? Yep. You want us to give you any bullets we find that are violations, life safety, or imminent dangers? Yep. So the day you know is the day I want to know, because in the meantime, while we get this in 6 days, 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years in some of your landlord cases, what do you guys need to know? You guys need to really speak with this guy and say, hey, I got bullets, and you guys can put it in your gun, your code gun, and go, we're not allowed to. We're not enforcement, you guys enforce. So we'll get it. I fix that, and you guys don't even know better. I grab a chain from Home Depot for $25. I grab this tail right here, and I come up and I grab the railing right there. Is that structural? Nope. Is it horizontal? Yeah, I just need to make it horizontal. So I'll fix this for $250. And when you come by and you see chains on the tails of any of these cantilevers, because as they get rusty and the 1/4 inch of plates that are there become 1 inch of rust, does it get heavier? At times it's a 150-pound woman dragging a 20 to 50-pound child. And as soon as that woman steps off this unbalanced cantilever that's already in this direction, right? She steps off, what happens to the child? Only weighs 25 pounds. It's catapulted. Or the child is smart enough to hold on. This child now is 12 feet in the air. And what is mommy doing? What does she say to the kid? Jump. And until a fireman gets there with his pipe pole and does what? Hooks it, pulls it down slowly so the child doesn't get even further scared. And then he puts his foot on it. Child gets away. Now what happens for that fireman that just put his foot on this cantilever that wants to throw itself back up? And there's more firemen arriving. So they've just lost one fireman, and what's he doing? He's a doorman now. He's a fire escape man. His job is to sit there, standing on this fire escape, while other firemen go up and down. So the fire department loses one guy. So cantilevers supposed to drop 2 to 3 feet per second by themselves, hit the ground, stay down. That's why they call it a balanced fire escape. Questions? This is a... Sorry. Sorry, I'm going to try to raise the volume, but for some reason...
When the man fell, he may have fallen a distance of
some reason it's not connected.
15 to 20 feet is what's being investigated right now.
So 15 to 20 feet, it's one of those cantilevers with a balance on the nose, which we're not allowed to build anymore, because they just hammered down whenever the cable gave, and that's what happened with this guy. So he went out, they were doing work on the roof, using the fire escape to bring stuff up and down. Are you allowed to use the fire escape to bring stuff up and down the roof? Nope, right? So because the cantilever wouldn't come down, him and 2-3 buddies went out there to the very end of the nose and started trying to get the rusty cable. This is a cable that, you know, goes around most weights. And guess what happened? This rusty cable, which is thick, half inch, just went, tick. He fell, hit the ground, died. His other 2 friends were far enough back that they held on, but it was a drop, and it killed him. All right, so that was in Utah. Oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get the microphone.
We have to question if it was in 2009, perhaps there may have been some damage there. Rust. If you catch it early enough before there's massive damage and there needs to be reconstruction, maybe the welding would have never been done.
2 of our heroes lost their life in that fire, and that was the cause. But regardless whether that was the cause or not, we still should have inspected that property.
It turns out many inspections are not being done. Undercover looked at fire escape inspection. Inspection on the fire escape was done in 2004. As reported Wednesday, that inspection was done by Giuseppe Falcone, who owned Ironworks in Malden. Falcone is being sued by the owner of the building that burned down, but he denies that from the owner of 296 Beacon Street, which did not have the fire escape inspected for a decade. I'm Mike Bodette for Fox Undercover.
Sorry about that. Did everybody hear that? So, welding witch doctors killed some of our finest. I taught a class right after that, 2014, I believe, was the year that happened. Probably about 8 years ago. I taught a class here. And, you know, everybody says, oh, the welding rods killed these firemen. If the welding rods kill the firemen, then that means that you're not supposed to be welding fire escape. Yet, in every one of your cities, weld just enough repaired to make it pass. But there's no, they don't pull any fire watches. Bolts and rivets. And welding has never been repaired. These firemen were on the ground floor. But when they broke windows front and rear, the 60-mile-an-hour winds just took that flame, and to my knowledge, they weren't burned. They died of inhalation. So please don't let anybody weld your fire escapes. Those are welded at the shop. They need to weld it at the site. They can take a welding trailer and they just weld it there. Then they bring it back in and put in 4 bolts. Installed with 4 bolts though. This is all welded. And by the way, they replaced those spacers. You guys know that the 75 to 125-year-old spacers that keep the thing every 1 inch, like this aluminum one. So what's the cure? Or no welding, and there's have a piece of grating. I mean, a piece of flat underneath here goes from front to back, and I put a McNichols clip on the back, which holds two of the flats. McNichols clip on the front, and 2 or 3, whatever's needed in the middle, and I've just negated this tread. The client can keep his tread because the flats are in good order. The spacer holding it. But again, the bolts on the side, there's no rust in any of the clips. And so whether you're looking at this one or looking at even grating that has spacers, so every run is about 2 feet apart. Just keep your grating. 1/4 inch, solid 1 inch top, they're fine, just put a reinforcement of that, and 24 inches later, make another one. So it's just a 1-inch quarter piece of flat with McNichols clips screwed and bolted down. No welding allowed or involved in that repair. And if there's some repair that has to have a weld, they're going to need a fire watch. So, 1% of the time, it can only be weld as a repair. Otherwise, everything can be turned into a mechanical connection. Very unique situation. Yeah, of course you can. But everything, a lot of times, we inspect bolts. We don't inspect welds because there's special welding. If you're welding on site, it's a special welding inspection for any welding on site. We don't do. So that's why pretty much all repairs on fire escapes have ceased the welding side. But there's still a few guys out there sneaking in. We call them the welding witch doctors. But they have a body count of how many so far? 2.
Fire escapes in New
Oh,
York
sorry.
City, they're crucial to survive so many buildings here.
After the recent fire escape collapse that killed a man in Soho 2 weeks ago, our investigative reporter Jim Hoffer went out to take a closer look at fire escapes, found that many are rusting, warped, or have missing pieces. Not a good scenario if you use one of them. Jim's here now with his exclusive report. Jim?
We learned that in the wake of that fatal accident, 3 additional fire escape steps were found to be loose, even though the 7-story structure was deemed safe in its last inspection. At least it had been inspected, even if not thoroughly. Thousands upon thousands of fire escapes 6 stories or less are rarely ever inspected. When a step fell 7 stories from a fire escape on this Howard Street building, it fatally fractured the skull of a man walking by. It also exposed the city's weak oversight of these steel structures hanging over the heads of New Yorkers everywhere.
You see a bolt missing. Should that have passed? There's a bolt missing on that connection. This is the actual fire escape.
Inspector and founder of the National Fire Escape Association, Cisco Manessa, says the Howard Street fire escape in its last check in 2013, when a private engineer found the structure safe with maintenance repairs required, in this case, painting, which the safety expert says masked the corrosion.
Let's all scrape the paint, so there's very few structural work really done on proper inspection.
In low 60, though there are tens of thousands of them, and many, as we've discovered, more than 100 years old.
Right, if you step on them, they're gonna ready to fall.
We went to his kitchen. So these kinds of fire escapes, thousands of them across the city of New York, are just simply not on the radar of inspectors.
And this is the norm. I believe that if we were to walk down this street right now, 75% of these would fail.
Let's do it. One after the other, these fire escapes, according to our expert, failed. 5 out of the 5 we checked.
It's supposed to be connected to that bolt there. If it broke off, it's holding an entire staircase. That staircase, you overload it, it's going to collapse.
Missing bolts and rust corrosion weakening every fire escape that we looked at.
When you get to 3/4 to 1 inch of rust pack,
dangerous.
And internally on a tread, that's another person who's going to fall through.
We wanted to see if the city knew how widespread the problem is. So we checked the 311 database and found in just New Yorkers called to complain about fire escape problems nearly 1,700 times.
That's a lot.
A red flag?
Definitely. Anything, again, on the exterior of the building that could fall on someone.
The buildings department says it has no plans to do random inspections. A spokesman tells us owners of buildings, stories or less, are responsible for safely maintaining their buildings. We should note here too that outside of the city, state law requires that all fire escapes, no matter the height of the building, get inspected every 5 years.
So, if you're in New York, and it's anybody you know is living there, all buildings under 6 stories. So guess how many 6-story buildings they built that need no facade inspection. If you have a 7-story, you have a 5-year facade inspection. You have a 6-story. So guess how many 6 stories exist, and they never have to inspect fire escape. I want to throw you another one. You ever been to LA? LA only inspects the ladders. Only. Every structure in LA So every structure in LA is fully functional. The cantilever is fully functional. What about the rest of the fire escape? Yeah, we don't care. Not that they don't care, it's not required. But now, as of January 1, every fire escape is enforced now the 5-year. Now, have I ever represented a city? I have represented the city of LA. It was sued for $50 million because somebody got electrocuted on one of the fire escapes. It had nothing to do with the structural adequacy, but somebody got electrocuted because within 2 feet was 4,000 volt power lines. So it's the city plus the electrical giant there that is on the fire escape. They still have to settle with him for $30 million, but he survived. Survived for what? You know what I'm saying? But, so can cities get sued? The answer is yes. But they settled with him for $30 million. I was the expert witness on that case, helping the city. Why do we do a lateral load test? 200 pounds. Question? Yeah, is there a question, somebody? Yeah, okay. Does he have a question? Nobody has a question. Okay. Warren, do you have a question? Okay. So guys, this is graphic. Okay? The reason why railings have to have a 200-pound lateral load test is in case you're smoking a butt, drinking a drink, and you're leaning on any rail, it needs 200 pounds of force exerted on it, and that's part of the load test. So 100 pounds per square foot, 200-pound lateral load test on all pieces of the railing. So just in case you missed it. Guys, lateral load test. This thing is supposed to be, there's supposed to be a frame here so that I can tie my posts to a frame. This post is attached to two 1/8 pieces of flat. And this thing ties back to the house. Anybody can see on the front row, is that an 1/8 or 3/16? Front row. Yeah, it's an 1/8. These need 3/8 to tie back to the building. So this could be that. All right, let's move it along to what's the next step? Tags. Everybody agree with tags? What comes into play? Maybe the state will get involved. Guys, all fire protection equipment must be tagged. Let's get a white tag on these things. And who controls the tags? You guys control the tags. You guys have a relationship with some printing shop in the area, and that's the approved tag. And so, show you tags. And again, we've done a lot of these classes everywhere. In Seattle, one of my first states that I helped write the confidence test, there was no confidence test. There was no 25-point question. I created it, and a lot of the states have copied it and used it. And again, Lowell is the #1 IBC code in the nation. Other states that are IBC based use Lowell example. If you're IFC based, then it's the Yonkers. They're #1. Okay? So this is 19 inches long, 11 inches high. There's a print shop that they authorized to make these uniform. And it has, you know, what company inspected it, the date it was inspected, the next date of when it's the next due date. So 2007, 2012, the name of the company and a phone number on these white things. So how do you know if fire escape is not certified in your city? It doesn't have a tag. That's all. It can have an outdated tag. And if it's white, most likelihood is that. All right, so this is what their tags look like when you walk down their alleyways. Will help? Will that help firemen and building inspectors? Always deal with the second means of egress? So what's this mean? Does the state have to do something? Can you create a local ordinance, or do you just, I don't know. State, cities, what do you have to do to say, I want all my fire escapes tagged? So what's this first step? The first step, you got to put out a general letter that says all fire escapes must have a tag. Please have your fire escape tagged. And if you have already certified your fire escape recently, just have your have your engineer call us. We'll tell them what print shop we use that makes standard tags that have your name on it, the current date, the new due date, some license numbers, some names, whatever code is. One of the last codes here was 1028.6. I don't know if you guys remember that one. Guys, understand? So tagging is a good way to get this ball off the ground. What about permits? Permits at the beginning of a process or permits at the end of the process? Will either one help you? Start chewing away at this? Anything else? How about the health department? Shuts down a building and everybody goes back in. Should a verification of a second means of egress be one of those requirements? You don't have any excuse in the property. What's the first thing you have to have? Guys, right? They say when they go to the fire department for one thing or they go to your department, what's the first thing you say? Is there two means of egress? Buying or selling this property. So make sure at the closing you have so any other ideas? So you're getting your extinguishers charged with fire escape. Oh, sprinkler systems. Do you think that sprinkler systems should be tied in with fire escapes? Because when the fire starts, the sprinklers put out fires. But in the meantime, while sprinklers going off, a lot of times some of these buildings have fire escapes. So every time you get a sprinkler test, should these two guys be married? Sprinkler testing and fire escape certification should be married. One triggers the other. So if I have a fire escape to inspect, I call the sprinkler guy because I saw sprinklers in the building. Hey, just I'm doing this. You want to coordinate and because the city official is going to want coordination on it. Do you guys think that's a great idea? So what ideas do we have? Any more ideas of a stop that forces owners to get their fire escape certified? The insurance is coming, but not all national insurance companies are going to step in and do this. Got it? Who inspects fire escapes? The authority having jurisdiction may or may not like an architect to do this. You may or may not like a specialty company to do this. But for sure, a engineer, and it doesn't have to be structural engineer. It's an engineer with a PE, right? So you got some PE guys that have no experience in this stuff, but the money is what? The money is good.
Well, they even have civil engineers that will attempt it, but that's up to people in this.
Because they don't specify structural, and a lot of people know. Everybody gets a PE stamp in every state. Certain states, they make you go for additional training on structural, so that you can call yourself a structural engineer. Otherwise, everybody gets a PE stamp. Okay? So be careful. So PEs, architects, and others acceptable to the building official, and you can have any other be washed or peer reviewed by a structural engineer. Okay? So engineers, architects, city officials. I have so many people tell me the building official said one loose tread, and as soon as I fix that one loose tread, I'm good. And then we have to tell them no, and then what do? They hang up the phone. Why? Because they're looking for a rubber stamp. Plenty of them out there. How much they charge? $200 to $300. There's a guy that's very expensive, only he knows who they are. They charge $1,000. It's called the blind drive-through. So this engineer just drives up to the property on the front, even though the fire escape's in the back. He rolls down his window. He has a pre-filled, signed out. You know this guy, right? And then he then takes this envelope and he gives him another sort of envelope swap. Paper for paper, right? You have a story on this $1,000?
I do. In fact, yesterday, I spoke with this engineer. He's a civil engineer.
Okay,
certified a fire escape. I had to call the gentleman. He said the addition to this ladder, which we discussed, which I'm certainly not going to accept because it's not allowed in code. I've inspected this and certified this, that the addition to this, there was no building permit pulled. I was not consulted in any of this. And he charged the guy. I talked to the owner. I said, look, you've got a problem. You can either appeal my decision, you can put it in a second means of egress. That's it. And I said, how much did the guy charge me for it? I said, $1,000. He says, $900. I said, okay. And so I put in a call to him. I said, I strongly suggest you call that engineer because he sold you a bill of goods. He did something that is not allowed by code, not supported by Mass General Law, certified the fire escape, which is worthless to me, okay, because they put an addition on a ladder. And I'm not going to accept it, that's for sure. And the guy's out $1,000, and the owner was sympathetic. He's a builder. He said, I get it.
So again, I don't fight code here, but some people have one strong line, some other people have another strong line. It's not up to me, it's always the AHJ to basically decide this route, and you said, no, I'd issue a repair permit to extend the ladder. So everybody's different, right? Everybody's different, but again, your interpretation. I know.
And that's where problems come in. And this is the part that drives me absolutely up a wall, is when I hear, well, he didn't make me do that in that community. Well, why not? We're all supposed to be working on the same code book, and it happens,
So just nationwide, my opinion, and this is actual, this is because I teach this nationwide and work nationwide, they allow, the rest of the country allows the extension of a component that was in its day not proper to grade. They allow, it's called a repair. Because 95% of the rest of the structure is compliant.
Not Massachusetts.
And
we'll get a better mousetrap.
So with that being said, so let's see, so city officials don't make opinions on fire escapes, leave that to the third party. Other than the third party come back to you and say, help me here, what do you want to do? Pre-existing situation. And again, on these ladders, none of them are at 6'8". You understand? None of them. They're all 9 feet. They stop at 9 feet. 3 feet more, plus minus. Got it? It's a big jump. Inspectors, right? They exist. Specialty companies that escape inspection. Now, this is what we get and we're involved. Let's talk about structural. So we come in here, this is a detention center for juveniles in Worcester area. So I went there, when you come on it, look, oh my God, it just needs a paint job. But as soon as we get underneath, this is what we saw. So this happens. So this fire escape took 50 years to get this way. Nobody's ever inspected, 50 to plus years. Again, to grow a 1 inch of rust, you need to leave it alone for 50 to 75 years. Now I told you guys that I do a hammer test. So when there's a hammer test for our safety, when I go up this rusty fire escape, looks undeceiving, and because some of these bolts inside are this, I'm sorry that you all can see, but you're all welcome to come up here afterwards. They all look like that, or sadly, they actually look like that. It's a point. So what's it need? It needs a heavy individual to step on it the right way. It needs a fireman loaded with a backpack and whatever he does is going to fail the whole of an inspection. Look at that one up. Tenants going up and down the fire escape. They got time to check structural underneath? Confidence test. There was none 20 to 25 years ago. You call anywhere, I need a confidence test. Specific questions specific to fire escape. I had to create one. This one I share freely. It's not trademarkable. I'll give you an example. You know who invented the airbag? Mercedes did. Did they patent it and make billions of dollars? No, they didn't. They let everybody in the auto industry know about it. Okay? And the airbag. Now, this questionnaire, this is where a certificate from somebody. Send them the Lowell documentation and have him sign it. Because in that document, it asks a lot of questions that are structural, a lot of questions that are paint, and a lot of code questions, information, knowledge, and beliefs. We use it has a statement that says, to the best of my information, knowledge, and belief, the fire escape is in conformity with the mass building code, correct? That's all it needs to say. So that, to the best of my information, knowledge or belief is a standard statement on every architect's and engineer's documentation to keep them out of court. Because they certified the fire escape that day. As soon as they cashed a check and they left the building, what do we got? So you make them sign this document, now I have to tell you that there's no rust in any of the tread connections. There's no rust in any of the gas connections. There's no rust in any of my stringer connections. There's no rust. Can you give me a document? He's going to give you a new inspection, filling out the snow. He goes, I have to care because the thing doesn't hit the ground or comes down to at least 6 to 8. You know what we just got informed. So asking you for assistance is just that they can tell if something is structural or not. This just proves that they think in their questions. It's all yes, no questions. This makes the design professional put his license on the line, because if he's going to rubber stamp stuff, always keep the first thing he sends, because it comes up with your city information. And then what happens? It's legal now, guys.
Yeah, this is something that should be approved at the state level, though. This shouldn't be something that we have to choose and what somebody should sign. Because what's going to happen is the city decides they're going to use this. We're going to send it out to all the homeowners. All the landlords are going to get together. They're going to go after the building official because they're saying, okay, you're asking for something that's over and above. Which, I mean, I'm behind it 100%. But get it approved at the state level so that way it's not the individual that he's looking to go over and above, and that the homeowner's going after him.
In the meantime, Lowell's already doing this, and so is Malden. So the building commissioner of, who's also the president of the MBCIA, came from Lowell, and the first thing he implemented in Malden was this. But yes, should the state have a confidence level? These are all general questions, guys, about every component. Is this railing component have any rust in there? Does it have a new bolt in it, or does it have an old bolt that's square head? Oh, we'd like you to load test old square head bolts, or as soon as you change it to a new hex head bolt, and you got silicone in here. Let's move on to the next one. Oh, on this stringer connection right here, is it all new bolts on the stringer connection? Is it sealed? Oh, great, you don't have to load test that. All the treads and on every component on the fire escape is covered, including cantilevers and ladders. So yes, the state should jump in and normalize this whole thing, but Lowell can't wait. They just did it. Malden can't wait. They just did it. So yes, I can state.
The problem with that is, you'll lose an appeal. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I learned from an old-time building commissioner a long time ago to the code. That's not in our code, so we don't use that enforcement. As great an idea as it is, where is that? What? The boss is a different animal. They do whatever they want anyways.
Guys, I know. Don't shoot the messenger. Jury has to get involved. I'm just saying, yes, the state should get involved. Because a lot of these guys are just going question.
I'm all for this, so, okay, I think they all should be inspected.
So like 40-something years ago.
Anybody go to jail?
To my knowledge, yes.
All inspections in the world, and you can find people who are the owners of the building or who are responsible for the maintenance. But until you put somebody in jail, and I mean in jail, not
national problem. And I told building official, you keep it simple. Ask for one of these. I don't care what kind of paper you get with it. This puts somebody in a situation where they're gonna lie. I'm just trying to give you 25 questions that make people lie, and the guy that signs off on this is usually a third-party inspector who's going to lie, has insurance, and may or nationwide and use voluntarily. None of these are state. To their website, this is Portland, Oregon, right? New York, who's inspecting these escapes? All right, inspecting other fire escapes. I'm hammer testing. See my 3-pound head? Look, the structural engineer on this says fix one tread. Right? This is this thing. Do these 4 things, which scrape and paint it, and I had to chill the reds. Those are all life safety. Hollywood in the East, this is in this person. 5 stories, hit the ground. Ever building. So it's not that the fire escape walk through New York City, okay? So this is a field. They don't mention that. These fire escapes are 75 to 125 years old. They pull the wrong. What's inside the wall? Right behind it is the 2 to 3 layers of brick, which is structural. So that's why fire escape steel is embedded 8 to 12 inches deep. Okay? So what you see behind there is what's starting to rot out, because a lot of times that half-inch space between the veneer and the brick inside, 75 to 125 years. So what happens is a bolt is supposed to look like this. You know, the through bolt into the building is supposed to look like this. Look at these pictures. Instead, they look like this. Tight. A fire tower in the nation that got is raised. In Oakland, so you can keep your weights down to the ground, and then use a combination of cables and yanks. Every one of those buckets have to commercial these sandbags. So sandbags, water bags, weights. And the accordion ladder needs to be dropped, and the cables need to be changed. And you exert. If you have to exert 1,000 pounds, 400 pounds to begin with, measured before, during, and after. Then you exert the full weight of 1,000 pounds, measured before, during, and after. This usually takes about 30 minutes per pull. You can single pull a bracket, or you can single pull 2 brackets side by side using a little aluminum I-beam between the 2. Perfect. All right, let's move it on. Low test. 10 stories, same thing. It's just you can bring all this weight up, so nobody locally. Now, practically, oh, this is a. So you have a choice to also drag the sandbags all the way to the top floor, right? And then start cascading these things down to the ground. So there you go. The old way of doing it, you drag all your weight to the very top, 25 pounds on that platform up above, then start cascading some bags down the stairs. Involves theoretical that I did, that got hurt. He fell through. This is the actual building. Only fixed those 3 treads. The rest of they started falling. They quickly settled the case right after that because it just didn't make any sense what they were trying to do there. All right, so let's do this way. We got the raffle. I got 5 minutes or a certificate for you that makes you a specialist now, a code specialist when it comes to Farscape because of today's class. This is for the trip to Hawaii. I'll pay by mistake. $150, which will get you to Hawaii. Sorry. All right, ready? 911-871. 911-871. And I believe we're at lunchtime. I'm going to be here for another 15 minutes, a half hour. If anybody wants to come see Russ, talk to me before you chew or get in line. I'm going to be here. Thank you very much, guys, for the class. We have a winner. He's got $150 towards the trip to Hawaii, or to buy pineapples on his way to Hawaii. Let's go.
Should we end it? End it?
Yeah.
Just go.
I might walk that.
Yeah, the insurance. It was ongoing forever, yeah. But the key that's going to happen, the insurance agent, they're going to give the building 30 days, not to think about it. You know, they say, we will not reinsure you because you don't have a certificate. They don't care whether your Farscape is certified or not. They just want a document in their documentation that says you've had this looked at. You can bring false documentation, but the key is the insurance agent is starting, especially with Brownstone Insurance. Yeah.
Certificates from insurance companies that say this property owner may have claimed $2,000 more in some issue that doesn't, we almost never get billed. Right. It's the same issue. I remember asking Tyler years and years ago, when's the state insurance agency going to come after? How much the officials?
It started. It has started. Yeah. Yeah. But again, it's only one assistant, and the assistant is the strong arm coming in saying, you only got 30 days to certify your Farscape. And they can get an extension as long as they know you're doing something about it. But otherwise, have you made it safe and functional in the meantime, not certifiable?
That's the one thing that's going to scare property owners.
Correct. Liability. Having no liability on their asset is the key. But you guys can also shut it down, not let them do it. You know what I'm saying?
Nice presentation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Do you have a question? Yeah, the aluminum ones, the biggest issue is that whoever built these, they didn't build them in standard. So give me a brackets underneath. Then give me a frame all the way around it, so that my load is the frame, not the grating. Because the grating sits inside the frame or on top of the frame. And so, and a lot of times, these are supposed to be 1 inch. A lot of these are 1.5 inches to 2 inches in some cases that I've seen. And it's all substandard bolting. The rivets on these things tend to be 1/8. And it's steel, and a lot of times if it isn't stainless steel, galvanic reaction happens, so this guy did not use stainless. You know what I'm saying? You can use, yeah, these are stainless. The only thing that doesn't have a galvanic reaction to a certain degree is stainless steel on aluminum. But look at this thing. And look at the little rivets. And so this thing is, to me, is not been, I think, structurally designed. I think somebody just went with it. They did the best they could, and then nobody spoke with them. So here's an example of some screws. Because they didn't have enough to reuse steel, they basically have inside here, they have they do this first one first, and basically there's a joiner plate inside. Single bolt here, but then they have 2 bolts going in the opposite direction. See this right here? Yeah, and look at this right here. This is only 3/16. I'm forced to use 3/8 standard. You can never see. So this is an original bolt right here. This is a hex head replacement. And so, so look at this rust jack in here. And then actually, so this one, good head, good nuts, no rust, low test. Right here, welded, right? So in a welded, no, I low test a weld. Or I negate this by putting a simple 3/8 bolt to it. I don't care about the welding. So bring it back to bolts. I would say, my opinion, this is a good weld, subject to a load test. If you want my opinion, and I issue opinion letters or opinion affidavits, I get a disclaimer of liability that should this weld ever fail in the future, you will pay my lawyer bill. You know what I'm saying? Because the law says I must load test this, but the city, so I compromise. I make the owner make sure that I'm not held liable should the weld ever fail in the future. And I also say the city too. The city is not going to be held liable that at this time. Here, put there, you know, we passed the grading, but now it's not flat and gives out. So what do? Another 1 inch by quarter flat underneath. Negates. Watch, I've negated this and I'm holding it together. So, are you in a city down here to you? Because, well, what do I say? Pre-existing non-conforming? I say the railings, I have a problem certifying these railings. There's no structure there whatsoever. Yeah. So, what do you want me to do? There's thousands of these. Thousands. So, do we up it? Look at this. This is with rivets. Look at this little rivet holding it here. That's a rivet. Yeah, it normally sits on the 2x2 frame. Nothing. Right. Yeah, so what do? So just help me. I came to your city and I'm saying, look, these regular bolts are not stainless, and they're thin. Everything is 1/8 or 16th. Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's all I got. Yeah. But again, yeah. It's a riddle wrapped in an enigma.